today is going to be about two particular algorithms in unsupervised learning, and they both form a part of clustering algorithms. Clustering, as such, is an unsupervised machine learning algorithm, and there are many forms of clustering. We are only going to touch upon two of them due to the obviously paucity of time. Due to limited time, we will talk about partitioning based method, one of which is k-means clustering. So that particular algorithm is called k-means. It is a partitioning based clustering method. We'll break down each of these terms in due course, don't worry. Next would be agglomerative nesting, which again is a form of clustering, but it is a hierarchical clustering. So there are not flat partitions here, there is a hierarchy. But what is clustering anyway? So we have talked about supervised machine learning till this point. We might have talked about linear algebra and regression. That's the background of matrix operations. We talked about PCA, which was unsupervised. So how are they two different? How was a typical classification algorithm different from PCA? What was the input type look like? Like, was it different in terms of the X and Y that were available, or the end product, or both of them? Let's have a look. All right. So supervised machine learning is like you have some input data, which is mostly a collection of features. So it's something round, it's something which is red and glossy, it is sweet mostly, right? And then it's also written on top of it with a sticker, or there's a basket which says these are apples, and somehow these are apples. So apart from the data, there is an annotation or label to it, right? That's called its description or target value, or we would like to call it label in the machine learning terminology, right? So what you have is input data and annotations. If I break it down mathematically, so it's actually capital X, which is the feature set, and these annotations are like the Y, or the target column, or the last column, or the description about the data. If you've had a look at the iris data set, have you worked with it, played with it when you talked about some classification algorithm? How many of you know about this UCI repository and the iris dataset that is there in it? It is also available in the sklearn library if you have already started working on Python, because that's what the theme of the course is. How many of you are aware of the iris dataset? By a show of hands. Okay, quite a few. That's good. So this iris dataset, if you look at it, it says these are the features, all right? Sepal length, width, petal length, width. These are the four features. Let me call them x1, x2, x3, x4. Entire row vector forms capital X, and I can call it the feature set. The class or the target is categorical in nature, meaning it is descriptive, it is not numeric, and it says something like setosa, versicolor, or virginica. So it is one of the three classes of the iris plant, right? So we will call this label or descriptor or the target, okay? And it has got a name to it. So there are three possibilities. So you can classify it into one of the three classes, right? So I hope you understand the X and the Y bit, right? Similarly for apples, it's like the input data is apple. So everything about these apples, its features, like I said, the color, the shape, and so on, that's capital X. And these are apples, this factor is Y, just like the species of the iris. So I hope X and Y is basically clear to you. This is what is the input in case of supervised algorithm. Both these things go inside the model. So the model knows about both these things, learns the pattern, and predicts the next time an apple comes to it or some other fruit comes. So it knows, okay, these were apples, these were not, right? So prediction is, we are assuming it's only 1 and 0, it's an apple or not. So the system has learned it because it was told that these are apples. If they look like that, if the features are so and so, then they would be apples. How about if the input data is a mix of fruits and we're not labeling any of them? Okay, so there are apples, bananas, and what is it, peach maybe? Yeah. So, but nobody's telling you what these are. That means X is there. Like this is a peeled fruit, this is yellow in color, this is slightly, hard in texture, and it's orange and it's peach in color, okay, but it's not labeled as such. Imagine unsupervised learning more to be analogous with the way child learns. So you leave a child inside a room, and if you are unlucky and the room is full of toys, you're going to have a hard time clearing that room up, because the child will group the toys as and how he or she feels like. You might have grouped them according to age or I don't know, the way you want them to be played or the way they fit in your shells. But the child might feel differently and might group the toys, just like the child would probably group these fruits. So nobody's telling the child. That's why we say unsupervised. Nowhere it's written what's the name of the fruits, but as an input, the entire bunch is going in. The model is looking for similarities and dissimilarities as well. So the model is looking for similarities within two items and then dissimilarity of those two items then from the third item. Remember how we form friendships. It's a very intuitive concept, clustering in the real world as well. Friends in a network are close to each other. That means they have similar property, even if it's a professional network, right? They would be co-authors, they would have the same research area, they would be working on the same technologies, let's say lamp or if you're working on bootstrap, then you'll gel with people of the same kind. Then you will have differences or distances from people who are not into this tech stack, okay, MERN or whatever that is. Or so to say, psychology honor student would have similar interests, friends, and will probably not be able to much understand a computer scientist, right? So this is how they are grouped or they form clusters. Although there's a lot of focus on heterogeneity and multidisciplinary nowadays, but for clustering purpose, we are only looking for similarities within a cluster and dissimilarities between clusters. So the word is intra-cluster similarity, inter-cluster dissimilarity, right? So the basic terminology here is that in input data in unsupervised learning, there would be no labels. So this is in the same iris data set. Just imagine that in that CSV, you will not reveal the last column, which is the class, and you will just go for the first four columns. So you'll actually not have. I'll show you the CSV. This data file, if I show you, it so let's say I hide these, the last column, iris setosa, okay, and then there is iris versicolor and iris virginica. Let's say I hide all of these. I only show the first four columns, right? These are the feature set. That is when I can say that it is an input to the unsupervised learning algorithm. I hope that's clear. Any doubts till this point? Shall we move ahead then? Any doubts, Ankur? Okay, probably not. So moving ahead. All right, so back to the presentation. So we assume that the X labels are being fed into the system, the model is learning something about them, and it's then grouping them. Again, I'm not saying classify because it might group the apples together, peaches together, and bananas together. Still, it is not able to label them. It is for the end user or anybody who consumes the output of this algorithm to guess what these actually are, right? All right, so can somebody answer in the context of supervised learning? If I have a two-dimensional data set, that means let's say I only have two features of the data, x1 and x2, and these are my data points. And after supervised learning, they are classified into something. However, if I apply clustering, which is a kind of unsupervised learning, they're also grouped. And if you're lucky, the classes would be same as the groups. So they are not entirely mutually exclusive things, classification and clustering. Sometimes you might want to check if your classes are all right by actually by clustering them as well. And sometimes you will like to check if your clusters are okay by trying to already know the ground truth but still hide it. Intentionally, let's say you hide the iris labels. You know the ground truth. You know the iris labels. Still, you hide them and you're basically validating your classification algorithm. So you will do clustering, you will see whether these groups are same as 50 rows each. ये जो तीन species हैं, you might not know their names, but आपने वही cluster बनाए. So if your clustering technique is correct, they will actually map to the three classes that are there in iris. I hope that makes sense, that how we can use classification for validating our clustering, and how we can use clustering as a pre-processing step to classification. Can somebody tell me, in the looking at this figure, what is the training set? So what will you feed into the model if you are looking for a supervised machine learning model? Can somebody tell me? Is there anything in chat? Let me check. Yep. So that's, I don't know if it's relevant. Right. So can anybody tell me, back to the question, what is the training set in case of this figure? It's pretty straightforward. You have the values here. Anybody?
X1 and X2 and the class labels.
Yes. So the class labels, probably you can say blue and red or circle and cross, for instance. Perfect. So that's the training set. While if we move to the next slide and we have this, the same things is what I have. The data points are exactly identical, but the blues and the red are not known to you. All the points look similar, and nobody is telling you that the labels are circles and crosses. So all you have is x1 and x2, right? Let's say, so that's the training set or input set to the supervised machine learning algorithm. What do you think is the expected goal? Like, what would be the output expected out of this algorithm in terms of this particular Cartesian coordinate visual? What do you think would it look like at the end of clustering? Clustering, as I told, is grouping of similar items. So you would probably expect these points to be grouped at the end of the day, right? And I also said in very basic terms that it would group similar items together and distant or different items would be in another group. So don't you think these points would become one cluster and these points would become another cluster on the basis of Cartesian coordinate plane distance that you see, at least the Euclidean distance in this space that you see? Okay. And in an ideal situation, these clusters would be the same as these classes, right? That's what I was talking about, the relation between classification and clustering. So the relation is the last column is hidden and the output can match to the actual labels, right? Okay. So grouping related examples during unsupervised learning is called clustering, right? And there are many clustering algorithms. In this session, we will particularly talk about k-means, and we will talk about another hierarchical method, that is agglomerative nesting. And if time permits, we can discuss Diana as well, which is exact opposite of Agnes, right? So for example, we are going to group trees, okay? Tree width and tree height, right? Coconut is a very tall tree. Banyan is a tree with a lot of width. Now, if we look at height and width both and then try to form clusters, okay, so probably these are the trees that would be very short and very narrow. So such trees would be in one cluster. These are tall and wide trees like people or I don't know, maybe some others. So they would probably come in one cluster, right? So how does it work? The k-means algorithm. It works on something called centroids. We'll discuss that later. So this is the basic overview of clustering. Now, this is when you can group them in terms of distance, and it's very obvious and visual, right? What if the similarity measure is something, if your data is text data, then the points are not corresponding to any numeric positions or distances really. So, what distance measures do you take? And how do you, in a physical space, segregate those points? Because in clustering, you also have to segregate essentially, right? For example, look at this data. It's not forming clusters like there are four quadrants and this is one cluster, this is another, then this and this. That's not the case. So here what's happening is they are clusters, they're more like concentric circles. So those that are closer to the center, meaning the small radius circle, may form one cluster. As you can see, it is rose in color, that's cluster one. Then yellowish is another cluster. And the outermost, if you treat them as roughly concentric circle, This blue is also a cluster. So there are data types which are not easily separable and difficult to visualize. That's why we can't do clustering manually, and we need dedicated complex algorithms for this. And there would be different situations for different kinds of data. There would be different clustering algorithms suitable for different kinds of data. Just as we have different classification algorithms for different data. CNN would suit an image because the way the image is represented, the convolution operation works well on it. The way text is represented, it has a relation, like the next word is related to the previous word. So recurrent neural networks make sense. And that's exactly why clustering would also depend on the type of clustering algorithm. The choice would depend on the kind of data that we have. So for this kind of data, it is very difficult to form clusters. They are mostly entangled points, but logically, after some similarity measure, it this was the output, and these were the clusters formed. All right. So here the distance measure is actually distance from the center point. So you can say radius of concentric circles. The smallest radius means the inner circle is one cluster, then a greater value of radius, that is the second circle, and the largest radius means the outermost circle. All right. Okay. Why are we worried about clustering? What real world application does it have? Why should we bother? Market segmentation. That means if I'm a company producing something, I would be interested to know what all groups of people buy my product. So one cluster would be, let's say, high income people who are splurging on luxury products of my brand mostly. Then there's a customer base who is buying Amazon, for example. Amazon Fresh users are mostly from, let's say, middle class. But then Amazon Prime subscribers and buyers of furniture, etc. on Amazon are people who who, I mean, their income or some other feature can be taken as a feature, and they could be clustered together. So all of this would be useful to me so that I can set personalized recommendations, so that I can plan my inventory accordingly. I can, the entire supply chain would depend on how I have segmented my market or my target market, right? Social network analysis clearly works on clustering. As you can see, similar colors form similar cluster, and that's how friends of a friend or friends in the network are suggested, because they are similar in terms of profile or the online presence, right? They like the same pages, or something is there which is similar. The features are somehow similar, and that's why they form a single cluster. And that's why you keep getting them as suggestions that add them to your network, because they are likely to be in your cluster. You get that on LinkedIn all the time, right? So I hope you're able to appreciate some real world applications of clustering. You might have observed them yourselves. Any doubts till this point? I'm open to queries if any. Please type in chat or raise your hand. Feel free to unmute. Anybody? Okay, Swati, you're giving me a thumbs up. So I'm assuming that's a go ahead, continue rather than you having a doubt. Right. Organizing computing clusters is also one example of clustering. Literally, clustering is happening here. So, what computing clusters do based on optimizing the amount of memory they want to use. So, they don't want to kind of overheat or overwhelm a particular cluster. They might look at the jobs that are there, and they might want to balance the workload on all the clusters. So, similar jobs are probably put in different clusters rather, so to say. And then astronomical data analysis. Visually, how these clusters are formed is again based on certain properties of astronomical objects that are there together. So this is how these items can be clustered. All right. Some more concrete examples. In biology, taxonomy of living things. Now, this is particularly relevant in case of hierarchical clustering. You see how the taxonomy, and it's not just with biology, you can have taxonomy in terms of software clones. You can have a taxonomy, like my own MTech thesis was all about taxonomy of software clones only. And then you can have taxonomy for something as simple as Android malware or defects, for example. So the superset or the most general kind of malware could be one, and then you break it down into subclasses. So if you appreciate what I'm trying to say here, is taxonomy in any field can be represented via clusters, because you can use hierarchical clustering there. Very simply put, you look at a family tree, right? So there are grandparents and parents and then children. So this is a hierarchy. Children are at the same level, so you can actually say that siblings form one cluster. We say one generation, and then with parents, they are one cluster because that's another generation, right? So in anything that can be represented by taxonomy, we can talk about hierarchical clustering. Document clustering, documents that are authored by the same authors, they can be grouped together. In legal documents, documents that are related to single case, they can be clustered together. The applications are actually very, very wide. Land use, if you look at using drones, if you look at a particular land area cover, and then you observe that this is an arid land, this is probably a water body, and similarly you can just look at different, they may be geographically distant, but those kind of areas can actually be represented using the same color. That means you have made all water bodies one cluster, and you've represented it with blue. So that will help in aerial navigation and drone satellite search, etc. It will help a lot in trying to understand the geographical terrain. Marketing, I already discussed it. City planning, obviously if you can identify house types, you will be able to install lights and cameras better. You will be able to cater to the required number of security personnel in that area. So anytime we talk about smart city planning, I think it's very important to form clusters of areas. You anyway have it implicitly also within cities. You have something called colonies and sectors, you have these made up. But in terms of infrastructure and based on some other factor also, you can actually group certain areas and their requirements can be met by the government or the whatever civic bodies applied there. Earthquake studies, obviously, if you can identify you might see news whenever some earthquake comes, it tells you those red regions or the, epicenters and the quake prone regions, how they are identified, or they are put in the single cluster based on their similarity in geographical, uh, how they are put up, and based on other properties, they are also clustered. For climate change, you can use clustering based on similar atmospheric conditions, right? For market research and economic science, also, we can use clustering to try and understand our potential buyer. So companies are doing it sometimes ethically, sometimes unethically. They are collecting our income and savings and spendings data. Anytime you go to a shop, especially Shoppers Stop, they'll be like, give us your phone number, and then there are coupons and vouchers. So, and without even questioning them, you are so quick to jump and tell your number. The only purpose is crowdsourcing. They'll get your number, they'll know your shopping habits, they'll create a database, they will know how and what to advertise to you, what schemes to bring in, so on and so forth. So, this all market research is also driven by data alone, and you yourself are feeding your own data when you give your phone number. You are trying to tell them that you are one of the point in the cluster, and they would put you in a cluster of, let's say, spendthrift or somebody who splurges a lot of money, and accordingly, there will be targeted advertising for you, right? Okay. Uh, Clustering can also be a utility or a pre-processing tool. So this was the end goal or the final end user applications. Now, please understand in terms of academics or research or as a project, if you are looking at clustering, it might help you. It might be a precursor to something more powerful or useful at the end. Summarization, for example, you have already read about PCA in a session by, I assume, Dr. Sushil Kumar. So what you already know is PCA is a very useful tool, which is one form of unsupervised machine learning. Then it can actually help you to cluster, right? So it can help you reduce the dimensions, and those reduced dimensions can actually help you in clustering further. You can do some association analysis also by means of clustering, right? So frequent item sets can be grouped together, right? Classification can also be done by hiding the target label, like I told you, and then you do clustering first, then check your classification output versus or vis-a-vis the clustering output. Compression, image compression. So if you have images and you want them to be reduced in size, what you can actually do is cluster the similar points of the image together. So many points will be represented by just one cluster centroid, and at the end of the day, you will have lesser number of pixels or a smaller resolution image representing almost same information. Of course, there is information loss, but not at the cost of much accuracy. You've saved on a lot of space and you're still able to convey the idea. So, image processing can also, PCA is also one example in which you can use, I mean, PCA is one utility which helps you in image compression. You can find k nearest neighbors. So, as a precursor to KNN classification, you can localize the search to a small number of clusters. For example, there is an you've done the cluster analysis, so you will get a point which will be very very far from most of the clusters. So it is definite; it will not form a part of KNN. So you can remove such outliers. In fact, if you form three clusters, you might decide to retain only one clusters and only find KNN in those clusters. So you will reduce your computations to a large extent. You have optimized your algorithm. Why? Because you first did the clustering and then you only dealt with KNN in the nearest cluster. You ignored outliers and other clusters. All right. So we've already discussed outlier detection while we talked about KNN. Any doubts till this point? Any doubts? Anything anybody wants to add? Okay, well, in that case, we will move on to the next bit wherein I want to talk about the quality of clustering. Okay, or if you wish, we can actually go to something concrete. We'll discuss the k-means algorithm first because I think a lot of theory might as well be boring and you want to do something for real. So uh, let's work out an example, and once we do k-means algorithm, so you might be able to much clearly understand the considerations and challenges in the algorithm itself. So I'll switch to the algorithm now. So and after that we will resume how we should talk about the quality of clustering, because you will have done the process with your own hands and it will be clearer to you. So feel free to grab a pen and paper, or if you're using your laptops or phone, if you can quickly switch to MS Excel. So we'll do some calculations and I hope you'll be able to solve the numerical with me, right? So I want this session takeaway to be something that, okay, fine, I did the entire example on my own. Okay, fine, I did make a Python notebook for implementing or executing k-means algorithm. So I highly recommend everybody to get hold of a pen and paper or a calculator that's there in your phones as well, or alternatively, you can work on MS Excel. So we'll talk about the k-means algorithm, we'll solve an example, and then we'll write Python code to do that exact same example in Python, right? Okay, I hope I'm clear. Now, what's the input to the k-means algorithm? K-means algorithm, here k means the number of clusters. So the whole idea is to get few representative points, and that few number is k number. So if I'm looking for three clusters, I'll say my algorithm is three means algorithm. But now what does this means? Does it mean the meaning mean? No, it means the arithmetic mean. So how is this mean calculated? What does it indicate? It means you look at points. So if there are 3 points, please recall the very first figure that was there on the Cartesian coordinate plane. So it had certain points. They had x1 and x2 values. The mean value of x coordinate of a point would be x1 plus x2 divided by 2, right? So that's what a centroid is. If there are 3 points, it would be x1 plus x2 plus x3 by 3. Now, the y coordinate mean would be y1 plus y2 divided by 2, right? So that's exactly what we're talking about. We're looking at points, and k means would mean that we are looking at k number of means. That means we're looking for centroids which are k in number. So if you are able to form k centroids, then you will be forming clusters around those centroids, right? So that's what the algorithm works on. The basic idea is you input the number of centroids and hence clusters. That means jitne centroids hain utne clusters banenge, right? That's what you're assuming in this algorithm. So if there are 10 points and somebody tells you make two clusters out of them, I'll make it sound less abstract to you. Let's say I have 12 people with me and I want to select, I want to play a volleyball match. So obviously, how many teams am I looking for? Like I'm not planning for an entire tournament. I am just going to play one match and I have 12 people. So I'm checking your sports knowledge also here. Anybody? I have 12 people. I want to play a volleyball match. How many team captains do I need?
Two.
That's great. So when I pick these two captains, treat them as centroids. Now treat them as K. I have picked my K is equal to 2 and I have picked my centroids C1 and C2. So my captain 1 or centroid 1 and centroid 2 are there. Now what am I doing? I ask everybody one by one, who do you feel close to, or who do you think would make a better captain, or who do you think your skills are more compatible with? In short, the term for it would be similar. So whatever way you want to define similarity, I ask each person किसके team में जाना है, ठीक है? And if I feel this is very tedious, let me make it even simpler. So I'm left with 10 people. Two, of course, are my centroids. So what I'll do is I'll say 1 to 10. So the first person says 1, the second person says 2, third person says 3. And then at the end, what do I do? Can somebody tell me a simple way to make teams out of these 1 to 10 serial numbered people? I'll probably just say even numbers go to C1, odd numbers go to captain 2. That's one way to do it, right? However, it may not be the correct way. They may not like, or the odd numbered people may not be close to C1. The even number people may not form a good team for C2. Do you understand my point here? So, what is important? The choice of captains is important in first place. Why? Because the two captains could both have been one of them could have been an attacker and the other could have been a good libero or just somebody in good defense position. That means both teams are not having attackers. Let's say all attackers or have gone into team one. That means it's not good clustering. So what should we do here? Do you think the choice of these captains is important in trying to have a balanced team? So ideally, I should have each. There are six positions in the volleyball match. I should ideally have the for every position I should have one representative in each of the teams. So how many of you think the choice of C1 and C2 is important in defining the quality of my cluster or the teams? सारे लिबरो या strong attackers एक ही team में चले जाएं, then the other cluster is not feeling good enough in terms of proximity or team work, and they might as well lose, and it might be a wrong kind of a clustering. So how many of you are with me when I say choice of C1 and C2 is important in determining the quality of the teams or clusters? Tell me. Shitakshi agrees with me. Anybody else? Okay. Right. Swati, thank you. So you're absolutely right. That means in K means clustering. K is my number of centroids and hence the number of clusters. Because if I pick two captains or two centroids, I'll pick clusters because I'm grouping everybody into one of those captains. I'm assigning or mapping them to one of those captains or teams only. So captains are representing my teams. That means centroids are representing my clusters. I hope you appreciate the analogy, right? So this is what it is, that choice of centroid would be important. It will determine how good the team allocation would be, right? The other thing is, how do I decide which team they fall in? That means there has to be some similarity measure or metric to decide the allotment. So in this case, the strategy was straightforward, even and odd numbers, right? In the other case, what we can do is, if there are numeric points, we can find Euclidean distance between the two, right? So inputs would be two, all right? First input would be the number of centroids, and the second input would be the training set, that is the x1 to xm, assuming there are m features, right? You will select k random points as centroids. So when I say random points, that means this k is exactly same as the number of clusters that you want. Now you have, that's the algorithm that we're talking about. It says repeat until centroids stop changing. So this is the stopping criterion for this algorithm. Now, what do you mean the centroids keep changing? Why would they stop changing and why would they change? See, what I'm doing in the centroid allocation process is I am taking out distance of every point from the centroid. And then I'm also updating my centroid. So I'll make sure that these points are actually closest to this centroid and not the other one. For example, I assign a person number 2 to the C1. Then I ask that person, are you closer to C2 by any chance? If the person says no, that means the allocation is fine. So if 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 are in one team and then 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 are in the other team and they're happy with it, that means centroids are not changing. They're not changing their captains. They are happy in the cluster on team in which we have sent them. Let's say after the first pass, that's not the case. So player number 10 says, I'm not happy with C2, I'm closer to C1. And somehow they say compared to what? And at your cost, somebody else has to come to C2. So who do you do a mutual swap with? So 10 observes that 9 is rather closer to C2. Okay, so 10 says, I'll go to C1, let 9 come to C2. So that happens. Now the teams are shuffled, right? In that way, what's happening is the centroids are now changing, or the teams are being shuffled, the points are being assigned to some other centroid, right? After that, after all this happens, now the team says, actually, we don't quite like C1 and C2. Let's assign another captain out of us who's closest to all of us. So once a team changes, you see a ripple effect, the captains will also change. We look at a numerical for it actually, right? So you'll understand this concept. What happens is once we find similarity measures, we shuffle the clusters because we want to ensure that the intra-cluster distance is minimum and inter-cluster distance is maximum. And for that, if there is a need, we will also update the centroids because centroid would always be the mean of the assigned points. Obviously, if person has come in, ओके अगर वो न्यूमेरिक वैल्यू मैप्ड है उस पर्सन से तो उसके वजह से मीन भी तो अफेक्ट होगा ना इफ दैट कोऑर्डिनेट हैज चेंज x1 x2 is what a point has. So if that point is changed, तो उसके coordinates mean को भी तो affect करेंगे, right? So that's exactly why the centroids are also updating. So if you observe that in two successive iterations, the centroids are not updating anymore, then it is safe to say that, all right, we will now stop this algorithm, right? And finally, these will be the centroids where the centroids stop updating and whatever we get would be the final clusters and we can name them, all right? So let's look at k-means clustering visual and then we will look for its numeric example and code, all right? So this is the initial phase. That means all you have is points. There are no clusters. Every point is same. That means green in color. Now k is 2. So these two centroids are picked up. Some of you might argue we are not picking up points, we are picking centroids. So how are we forming these centroids? Are they random or these are two seed points? These are actually two seeds. Okay, so it is either the centroid of all these points. We have taken some random points. Maybe the first few points, if these points are 20 in number, the first 10 ka jo mean hai that we have taken as this point, and the rest 10 is this point. So this is actually mean only, but of what points? That is random. I might have taken even numbered position points. I might have taken odd. I might have taken the first 10 out of 20. I might have taken the rest 10. But based on some criterion, this is the centroid. Okay, so these are my initial centroids. Since k is 2, that means I am fixated at forming two clusters only now. One is the red cluster, the other is the blue cluster. After the first step, these were the points that were found closer to red point as compared to blue point. That's why they were colored red. Okay. Similarly, these points were found closer to red, blue point as opposed to red. That's why they were colored blue, or in other words, they were assigned the blue cluster. Did you observe any change in the next two iteration? In the next iteration, yes, centroids were updated. Some points shuffled, so the mean of points became different. All right. So if you can observe, after assigning these clusters, the centroids also updated because the mean of the red points is different from that of the mean of the original 10 green points. So for example, if this red point was formed out of these points, but now what has happened is few of these have gone in the blue cluster. So obviously this red centroid would be updated. Another iteration, another reassignment of points, another updation of centroid, as you can see. Again, look at these 2 points change color in the next iteration. Centroid doesn't change much, but these points have now been assigned to this cluster. There might be equal and opposite effects sometimes, no? Cluster might remain the same. Cluster's head, sorry, the centroid might remain same, but points can be reassigned. Finally, centroid still update. And when they stop doing so, this is my final cluster assignment. And for k is equal to 2, these are the two clusters formed. Now, how does it happen in terms of the numerical that I was talking about? So, are you ready for the numerical, everybody? Any doubts till this point, by the way? Probably not. So, please open your Excel sheets. I've kept the example rather short and simple, so you can all note it down and do it along with me right here. I'll try and zoom in. I hope this is clearly visible to everybody. So in order to start, you have to write the x and y values. Please make 2 columns. These are the x values. These are the y values. So there are 10 points basically. You can say the points are 50, 52, 31, 04 and so on. Or you can say these are the x values, these are the y values. Please don't confuse it with the y label. If you talk about them in terms of feature, you can actually call them x1 and x2. So these are my 2 features only, because the only input to clustering, please remember, is feature set only. So this is x1, this is x2. All right. Let me copy the x values for you in chat so that we can quickly get hold of the example. These are my x values. I've pasted in chat. And these are my y values. Rest of the operations, you will apply formulae and do them. These are my y values. They start from 0. The y values start from 0. Okay. Now, what is the initial centroid for these points? The initial centroid is, I have done some initial cluster assignment. That means, alternately, I have said, just like the volleyball team that I talked about, these are the 10 players, okay, because the other 2 players are the centroid or my captains only. So for these 10 points, I told you, no, I'll assign them to team 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2. Alternately, that means it's like odd and even positions are assigned cluster 1 and 2 alternately. So because I have to start from somewhere. So this is one random assignment that's done. Based on this random assignment, there will be some centroid value also, right? So please understand, if you select only the cluster number 1, that means you have these points, row number 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 in Excel. So these are the points that you have, 5, 0, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, and 1, 3. What will be the centroid of these points? You can do a simple 5 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 divided by 5. That will give you the x coordinate. Okay. And I have applied a formula in Excel for this. What I have done here is, I've said average if E4 to E13 is H3 and then V4 to V13. That means for cluster 1, this is the x coordinate average. And for cluster 2, this is the x coordinate average. Or you can say the centroid for cluster 1 is 2.6, 1.4. This is the x value, this is the y value. Please understand, it is not the y which is target label. It is nothing but x2 or the second feature. Okay. So 2.6, 1.4 is essentially the centroid for the first cluster. So यहाँ पे wherever you see row number 1, no, you can actually manually check it. So 5 plus 5 plus 3 plus 2, 8, 10, 12, 13. 13 divided by 5 is 2.6. ठीक है? Similarly, 1.4 कैसे आया है? It is the average of x2 for the clusters assigned in cluster 1. You can use a similar formula in Excel, which is called average if. So it does a conditional average. So if rule हमने किस पे लगा दिया है? Out of xy values, if you're getting 2, है ना? I3 का value क्या है? 2. So wherever you're getting 2 rows, you can accordingly average out the x and y coordinates. So the average or the centroid for the second cluster is 3.2, 3. I hope that's clear. So you can relate it to that example. You have a few points. पहले point का centroid 2.6, 1.4 आया. So this is like that red dot. ये red dot के coordinates है, and you can see blue dot के coordinates है. All right? Dot or cross, whatever that is. The centroid was a cross. Okay, so this is my red cross. This is my blue cross. After the first iteration, I hope this much is clear to everybody. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Now there's something called SSE that you see. It is nothing but sum of squared errors. Okay, that means there are certain errors or distances of the points, and you want to sum these squares. So distance squared and errors हम find out करेंगे. How we will do that? Let me zoom out a bit. You find something called, so for all these points, you are going to find Euclidean distances first of all. That means from the centroid, what you're doing is 5 minus 2.6 whole square plus 0 minus 1.4 whole square. This is the Euclidean distance. You're not finding the square root of it. You are just finding the squared distance. Okay. So this is what I get. This is the squared distance of the first point from the first cluster. So हमने simply क्या करना है? We have to find the distance of the point 50 from the distance from the point 2.6, 1.4. So if you do it on a pen and paper, 5 minus 2.6 whole square plus 0 minus 1.4 whole square. यही कर रहे हैं हम essentially. In terms of Excel formula, what you're doing is this cell minus this cell square or raised power 2, right? Plus this cell minus this cell raised power 2. Okay. Why am I not computing this square roots? Because all I have to do is find points that are closer. So I have to compare distances. Will it make a difference if I compare the square root of the distances, or if I compute, if I just compare the squared distances, is it going to make a difference?
Errors will be amplified in the square distances.
All right, but I will know for sure that relatively to which centroid my point is closer. I know about the distance at least. They will be amplified, but because I am also ignoring the signs of the errors. So if one error is exact same magnitude has a plus value, the other has a minus value, it might as well get nullified, and I don't want that. So I'll take the squares and I'll not do a square root when I'm trying to find to which cluster to assign it to. Because 2 square ho ya 2 ho, 3 square hai 3 hai. If 2 is less than 3, then 2 square is also less than 3 square. Now I can actually reduce my computation overhead this way. Okay, so I'm happy with the distance squared, and I'll just compare this for all practical purposes. So all I have is distance squared. Similarly, from cluster 2, I have computed the distance squared. That means I'm trying to find out how distant is the 0.50 from 2.6, 1.4, and how distant is this 0.50 from 3.23. So if you go back to your example, it's like trying to find out how far is this blue point from the blue cross and how far is this blue point from the red cross. So I'm trying to find the distance of a point from the two cluster heads. Why am I doing this? Because I want to assign it to a point from which it is less distant or from which it is closer, obviously. So the other formula that I have applied now to another cell is min, meaning minimum. So I have to find minimum out of these two. Although it is visible also, these are very less number of values, just two values, and I can directly say 7.72 is less than 12.24. But if you want to make a formula out of it, so you have applied min. Okay. So because min is this, that means I will assign it to which cluster? 1. Here I have applied a if formula. But again, you can do it manually for now, that this distance has come from the first cluster. That is why the first point will be assigned to the first cluster. I hope I'm making sense. Just a quick recap. Write down all the points. X and Y, meaning the 10 points along with their two coordinates are written. Randomly, they are assigned a cluster and we try to assign equal number of points to all clusters. So here we do a odd even thing randomly. All right. Or you can shuffle them and then do a random odd even just so that any parity is removed in first place. Then these centroids are computed as average values of the x and y coordinates. Then distances of these points are computed from the centroids using Euclidean distance measure. Again, the k-means algorithm can have its variance based on what the distance measure is. If you look at Manhattan distance, that's a different k-means algorithm. If you find the Hamming distance, it's different. If you find cosine similarity, if your data is nominal and not numeric, then that's another kind of distance measure. Okay, so you can change the algorithm in terms of changing the distance used for k-mean centroid computation, right? And accordingly, whichever is the lesser distance, that cluster is assigned. So please notice this is what you had at the time the algorithm was initialized. And after the first iteration of this algorithm, this is what you have as cluster assignment 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Only one point has changed its cluster. This point has gone to cluster 2 instead of 1. By the way, we were talking about sum of squared errors. So what we simply do is we just do a sum of these distances squared, okay, because these distances are nothing but deviations or errors, and we are going to do a sum of all these. Why am I doing this? Because in the, you know, our target may be something like we can only stand an SSE value of 30. Anything above that is too much of an error and I don't want that. Okay. And based on this, the convergence rule says false. So maybe I have applied some formula which says till the point these two clusters are not changing. So, you know, there can be different stopping criteria. One is if these two are identical, you stop. And then what is the point of doing the whole exercise when the cluster assignments are remaining the same? So you might want to stop at this place is at this juncture. The other can be that you decide a threshold for the SSE, that if the error reduces itself to say 25 or 20 or even 30, then I'm happy. I don't want to do more iterations. Okay. So you know the stopping criterion for k-means. You know the different variants that there can be of k-means based on different distance measures. Based on other things also, we can have different k-means variants. We'll talk about them later. First, let's finish up with this example. Now let's come to the next iteration. For the next iteration, we'll assume these are the starting points. Please notice that this is nothing but these cells are copied here, okay, just for reference. Now, again, we'll repeat the tasks. That is, after we have these clusters, we update the centroids. Because the points have differed, obviously centroid will be different. So this point will be the average of the one cluster points. It will be different. So my next centroid is 3, 1. And here the next centroid is 2.8 and 3. Now I will update the clusters accordingly by looking at the rule, finding out the Euclidean distances, and to whichever point these points are closer to whichever centroid, they will be assigned to that cluster. Then manually or by formula, you can say the minimum out of these is which that cluster is assigned. Again, you will do some of these squared errors. Notice that it has reduced from 36 something to 33. Yet we are not converging. Why? Because as you'll notice, this cluster assignment is different from this. Now, even the second point has gone from cluster 2 to cluster 1, while this point has gone from cluster 2 to cluster 1, and the others remain the same. And even this point has gone from 2 to 1. Okay. So, a lot of changes there. So, we cannot yet stop. Again, this is identical, and we repeat the computations. SSE reduces to 26, and if you notice, it eventually becomes 22, which is quite good. And you stop. Why? Because you notice this vector is identical to this. That means the clusters are not updating themselves anymore. The points are remaining in the same cluster. They are happy with their team heads now. 1 1 1, 2 1 1, 2 2 2 1. Then there is no point of updating the centroids. So if you look at this cluster analysis, these were the initial points, and after they were put in clusters, the colors are not distinguishable here. That needs to be done. I hope when I share the Excel, we'll be able to update it and make it better in terms of visualization. All right. And please email that to me. I'll drop my email ID after the session. So anybody who's listening to me carefully, you need to send me a better version of this Excel. Thanks already. Okay. So that's about the numerical. Any doubts till this point? If not, we'll move to the Python code for the exact same numerical, and I hope you'll be able to relate better. Any doubts, anybody, or anything you want to add? Is everybody ghost signed in? It'll be happy to see a show of hands. Repeat. Uh, do you mean centroid initiation? Saurabh, could you unmute and what do I have to repeat really? Section 2 iteration. Okay, the second iteration. You want me to repeat the second iteration? Let's see if I can help. So the first iteration is straightforward. What you do in the second iteration is exactly same as the first iteration except the centroids update, obviously. So if these are my distances, right, these are my cluster assignments now, that's why the centroids have updated. Now I'll again find the distances of these centroids, these old points from the new centroid. So how far is 50 from 31? Is it closer to 31 or is it closer to 2.83? It is very, very far from 2.83. So 50 is rather close to 31. Okay. That's why we are assigning it to cluster number 1. The rules remain the same in all iterations. The only point is when do we stop iterating? We stop when the clusters remain unchanged. I hope I have made myself clearer. If not, please unmute and ask your specific question, like which cell of the Excel file should I? It's clear? Okay, that's great to know, Saurabh. Anybody else? Any doubts? All right, great. Moving on, let's look at the Python code. So if you have Google Colab, please sign in. If you use VS Code or any other coding environment in Python that you might have been using in this course till this point or in your class lectures, just go ahead and start writing the Python code there. Before the iris dataset, I would actually like to do example number 2. So this is what we just did. All right, so let's focus on that. So these are the basic libraries that you need to import. NumPy for transforming your data to an array, for which you'll also, so it is dealing with numbers and arrays. Matplotlib is for visualization, and here I've created an alias for it because I'll be repeat using it. From sklearn library, the cluster package is already there, and from that you can import the k-means algorithm, right? So from sklearn.cluster, import k-means. And from sklearn.preprocessing, I'm scaling my data. Now, why is scaling important? You might have read about it, normalization and scaling, feature scaling in regression and other problems as well. If you have not, I'll try to make it sound simple to you. Consider a point 2, 3000 and the other point being 2 lakh, 1. So using one point is on a scale of 1 to 10, or one coordinate of feature is on a scale of 1 to 10, and the other coordinate of point, so x1 and x2, if these are my 2 points of features. So one value is like 2, 3 lakh, the other is 3, 1 lakh. So they will be very far off in the space and there will be a lot of computation involved. So can we not map them on a scale such that the ratio remains the same and the distances remain representative? For example, for 1 kilometer, we could say 1 centimeter, right? So that's scaling. It just retains the relative information and it reduces your computation and error proneness. Okay. So standard scaling is there so that features can be brought on the same scale really. However, in your example, it's irrelevant because they are all on a scale of 0 to 10. So they're very small numbers. The number of numbers is small and so is their value really. But you might want to take it as a good practice and always do it anyway. Even for the iris example, there is no need of scaling. because that's quite a toy example, toy data set with 150 tuples, and the values are also all in decimals. I think they're all near about 4 to 10 or 11. So it's not a wide range, but if the range is too much, it's good to always scale. Okay, so this step is actually optional, right? I am also commenting out the evaluation of clustering because in the interest of time, it is actually almost infeasible to cover both partitioning based and hierarchical algorithms and also their evaluation in this lecture. All right. So this is a comment, but I'll share the sheet and feel free to study about it or follow up with me via email or this can be discussed in some other session any other time. Right. So the very first thing that we've done is made an array out of the x values or the x1 values, so to say, and we have reshaped them or scaled, as a single feature, right? And so similarly, we have done this with the. Please notice these are the exact x1 values that we took in Excel in the first column, and these are my second column values. All right. Okay. Now we are forming a stack or a 2D data set of it, okay, using NumPy array. NP has a method hstack, meaning horizontal stack. So just as they are placed in Excel, it's the same way this XY feature is now put up. This is the standardization and transformation. All right. Now there's something called elbow method. Let's see what this is to determine the optimal number of clusters. If you don't know the optimal number of clusters and if you want to fix the number of clusters, so we'll say, okay, the number of clusters is 2 and I will just run this example with 2 clusters. So in that case, I can say k means and the argument for this method can be 2. So I will apply k-means. I'll say k-means dot fit data scale, and if I don't say anything, some default argument would be taken up. Okay, so or I can say k-means and I can overload the method by writing just the number of clusters as equal to 2. Even if I don't give values to these arguments, they will take some default values. Okay, so initialization means what variant of k-means are you using? K-means plus plus is what we have discussed. Maximum iteration that says is 300. That means you can stop either when centroids don't update or you anyway stop after 300 iterations. Okay, it's possible that centroids are still updating even after 300 iterations. So you say 300 iterations or centroids stop updating, whichever is earlier. All right. Initial points is 10 and the random state with which you start can be any number that is 0. This helps in our choice of centroids basically. All right, so this is what the arguments are of the k-means method, which is available in sklearn library. You don't have to implement this algorithm from scratch. But yes, you have the flexibility to tweak in these arguments of the k-means algorithm, which will probably affect the performance also and the number of clusters also sometimes based on this first argument. And finally, we'll fit our data to this. Now, what is the elbow method really doing? Elbow method says you can try it for 1 to 5. So I don't want more than 5 clusters and I obviously don't want less than 1 cluster. Eventually the entire data is 1 cluster. So I should at least have 2 clusters. So it says for 1 to 5, because in Python this 6 is excluded. So for I is equal to 1 to 5, what you have to do is you have to try k-means and you have to find out inertia and apply the elbow method. How is the elbow method applied? Initially, the error is a blank array. It's SSE is a blank array. Elbow method would be a visual way to determine the number of clusters. What it does is it tries to plot the SSE, sum of squared errors, okay, against number of clusters. I hope this is visible, right? So when number of clusters on the x-axis, because they are independent and SSE is obviously dependent on the number of clusters. When we plot them, treat it as an arm. And in your arm, what happens at the elbow? What do you see at the elbow? You actually see a joint, okay? You see a sudden drop or rise depending on from where are you looking at that. So actually there are 1 and 2 and rather 3 elbows, okay? So you can choose any. Okay, that's a rather weird arm. Okay, just saying, elbow method will actually give me certain turning points or joints, which will be like, what is it telling really? That at the cost of increasing the number of clusters, my sum of squared error is not reducing much. It's rather flat. So why don't I stop at this? Why don't I just have two clusters? Or you could say, why don't I just have three clusters? Or why don't I just have four clusters? So 2, 3, and 4 would be good number of clusters. For this example, 5 is obviously the maximum, so you don't want to stop at that. And 1 is anyway minimum. So the elbow method is actually giving a sharp joint at 2. And with this method, 2 can be a good choice for the number of clusters. So this is what elbow method for finding SSE is. So we are seeing that at the cost of increasing the number of clusters in computation, how much SSE am I able to reduce? If not much, then it's not really worth the pain. All right. So that's what the elbow method does. And that's how you choose the K with the help of elbow method. All right. There are many other methods also that have come in place, and the elbow method is not the only one to determine the number of clusters. But if you want to plot the elbow curve, you can do it with matplotlib, right? You give the x and y labels and you just say plt.show. So you're plotting this function in this range, you're plotting SSE array, okay? The SSE array values are coming from where? Obviously, you're populating it as SSE.append, K means inertia. Inertia is nothing but SSE. So SSE array was initially blank, and then finally you found out SSE. sklearn gives you an inbuilt method to in the k-means algorithm or k-means library to find out inertia. In fact, not method, I would call it a property. So k-means dot inertia. That's how you access the inertia property of k-means algorithm from sklearn. So directly you say k-means dot inertia, okay, and you get hold of this value, you retrieve this value, and you append it to the SSE array which was initially blank. All right. So that's how you are finally plotting this array on a range of, so on the x-axis you have range 1 to 6, that means you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on the y-axis you have SSE. All right. Choosing the optimal number of clusters. Here you can choose 2 clusters for this example, you can assume, okay, and then by choice of, after the choice of cluster, let's see what you're going to predict or visualize in terms of the cluster. So you draw another figure wherein you say cluster 1 is say red, that's cluster 1, and the cluster 2 could be blue. All right. Okay. And how do you plot the centroids? Again, there is an inbuilt method for it called cluster centers. So you're starting from the first cluster center, that is 0, and you are also plotting the other cluster center. All right. Evaluation, again, I have commented this out because we have not understood it yet. Okay, DB score and zeroed score. That means how good the clustering is. So till this point, we have understood how to do the clustering, how many clusters to choose, elbow method. When to stop, when clusters stop. Like we can converge when clusters stop updating. All right. So SSE could also be a criterion, or clusters stop updating. So this was the elbow method. This was the result of k-means visualization at k is equal to 3, blue, red, and yellow. That means no, it's these two are centroids. So we have two clusters, blue and red, and the yellow ones are the centroids. Please notice centroids are not actual data points. Okay, if they are, then that's called another version of k-means algorithm, or another variant rather. Okay, k-medioids. Sometimes when the data won't be numeric, you will have the mode as a measure of central tendency. That would be a centroid because you can't find mean for text data, right? So these are the certain possibilities and discussions possible in k-means algorithm. All right, so back to the code for this example. These are the libraries we use. We transformed it into an array, used a standard scalar, looked at the elbow method, found out inertia, which is nothing but SSE, plotted the elbow curve, predicted using the k-means as well, found out the value of SSE, which will be printed. Let me show you that as well. And finally, we plotted the centroids as well. So this is my sum of squared errors for k is equal to 2 is 10.79. You might argue that it was coming out to be 22 in our example. How many iterations did we do anyway? Just about 3, 4. They might have done about 200, 300, right? So look here, we've got SSE of 10.79. So you can do a lot better with Excel, okay? And then this is my visualization of clustering. Now, any doubts thus far? Yes, I will share the collab link, of course. You want it to be done right away? Let me do it right away. Anyone with the link can view, and there it goes in chat. Sorry. Anything else? It'll be great if one of you can confirm that the notebook is accessible. Yes?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Thanks. In that case, I think I'll skip going through the iris dataset clustering because you can do that later. I want to start with hierarchical clustering as well. So, similar to this, you can apply k-means on iris dataset also and get hold of the results. I've also done PCA, okay, for iris. So, feel free to have a look at that as well in this notebook. All right. About this Excel, let me see if I can share the Google Sheet as well. Yep, there you go. So this is the numerical example for k-means. Did you get that? Just a second. Can somebody confirm if it is accessible? You can download and make changes. It might not be editable, but at least you can view and download. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Moving on. So let's cover hierarchical clustering as well, and then we move on to the generic discussion about clustering analysis and what good clustering is and what should be the next challenges and steps ahead. Okay, so I would now like to move to agglomerative nesting or agnes, so to say. All right. So what we talked about was k-means clustering, which was a uh, it's partitioning based clustering. That means we were making partitions, be it concentric circles or be it groupings. Okay, they were partitions. They were all at the same level. Okay, I hope my screen is visible. The slide says hierarchical based clustering. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So hierarchical based clustering is different from k-means because k-means is a kind of partitioning based clustering. That means you're making groups or partitions, but there's no hierarchy. Consider like an organization. If it's a traditional one, let's say an old institute, maybe like NIT itself, okay? So there is a hierarchy. Like there would be a director, and then there would be deans, then HODs, then assistant professors. Okay, I'm only talking about the teaching faculty, okay, not students or not teaching staff. So that's what the hierarchy is, and we can form clusters. So director would probably be a lone wolf, like a lion, maybe nobody in that cluster really. Maybe other directors, but for this particular organization, that's the cluster head. Then deans can actually form one cluster because they're similar to each other in their job roles. Then would come the HODs, and then assistant professors would be one cluster. So you see how they are similar, but they are also at a hierarchy. Or you can say that one cluster is like a subclass or at a lower level, similar to what taxonomies are. I talked about the taxonomy, okay, family trees and so on. So this is the kind of clustering which is different from clustering toys together, or market segments. They are partitions. They are not having any hierarchy in them. More like a startup culture. So right after my PhD, in fact, I'll tell you a personal story. I don't name the company, but I was hired and I asked, what's the job role like? I mean, what am I supposed to do? They said everything. They're just 15 people, and you'll be everything from CEO to grabbing yourself a cup of tea, dry, and sometimes even making rangoli. You were the HR itself. You are going to be the team lead. You will be the PR person. You'll be almost everything. You'll be coding, the database administrator. So there is no hierarchy, right? So that's what you can assume. In contrast to hierarchical, you can say partitioning based. That means there will just be partitioned cubicles, so to say, and the task would be divided in that sense. Anybody working on similar task would be like one team, but it's not like one team would be somewhere at a higher or a lower level. The communication channels would be open. Okay, and so that's what a partitioning based clustering looks more like. They are partitions based on similar traits, and there is necessarily no hierarchy or taxonomy in those data points. Okay, by the way, I'm not advocating, I'm not being pro or against any kind of culture, be it hierarchical or flat, so to say. It's just workable solutions, and whatever works in whatever organization is fine. So in hierarchical based clustering, we'll talk about clusters being organized like a tree. Okay, there would be a root, and then there would be leaves, and then which would be like the end clusters or goals. All right, so we can visualize it as a dendrogram. Now, please understand what a dendrogram is. Look at these points 1, 3, 2, 5, 4, 6. These are like my data points. Okay, in the previous example, you can treat it as 1 to 10 points. Okay, or the points that are to be clustered. These are my distances. So dendrogram is that hierarchical tree or visualization or diagram which will cluster the points together. So if I see that 1 and 3 points are close to each other, sorry, so I'll say that they can be clustered together. 2 and 5 are closest. That means their Euclidean distance is minimum. So I'll put them in one cluster. That's cluster number 2, written in red. Now, please see how they are merged. So 2 and 5 together is one cluster, but at the higher order or level, this one cluster will be grouped with point number 4 and further form a cluster, which is cluster number 3. Okay. This cluster 3 further can group with cluster 1. Now, this clustering is different because the level at which it is merging is different. So that's what the dendrogram shows. Okay. We'll talk about how this merging is done, but just for now, understand that in hierarchical clustering you have something called dendrogram, and the clusters are nested. You see how they are not mutually exclusive. There is a hierarchy, just like you've talked about the Chomsky's hierarchy. If you talk about the formal languages, right? And when you talk about set and subsets and Venn diagrams and relation between ML, AI, and so on, you see such kind of nesting, right? So it's not mutually exclusive. It's not partitioning, unlike what you have in K-means. In K-means, it was very clear. Either those were concentric circles, or they were very red and blue set of dots, clearly distinguishable from each other. Here, there is a kind of nesting. That means you can actually decide where do you want to stop, what level of clustering, kitna nesting aapko chahiye, you can decide. For example, in the organization example that I talked about, so I have director, dean, HOD, and assistant professor. Let's say I have only two steps on a staircase, and I want to take a photograph, group photograph, and I say, so you group yourselves into two levels. Okay, will it make sense that the director comes on the first step and everybody else is at the second step? Oh, is the meeting being recorded? I hope I'm not saying anything politically incorrect. Just kidding. I'm fine even if it is being recorded, just trying to make you understand the concept. So, if on the first step in the staircase there is the director and everybody else is on the second step, the photograph will not look too good. Okay. Probably we can decide that, okay, let's say director and deans and even HODs. Why am I saying this? Just because I know the number of people that there are. Okay, I'm just being practical with the number. So the director, the deans, and HODs can actually come on the first step of the staircase, and all assistant professors can come on the second step. Now, you see what I have done here? You can view it as I have merged the certain clusters in the hierarchy, or you can say that I have decided which level I want. Now look at this dendrogram. What I'm trying to say here is, if I want all points to be in different clusters, then they are there like that at the very first step. But if I look at this level, I'm talking about levels. Levels are like steps. So at this level, I say I can only afford two clusters or two groups. Suppose there's a reward to be given, and I only have two kinds of it. So I'll say, okay, so to everybody in this hierarchical stature, I'll give this award, and to the other, I'll give this. Similarly, if you're talking about points, I say I can only have two levels. I can only afford two distinguished clusters. It's like choosing the value of k in k means clustering. उसके लिए elbow method था. यहाँ पे dendrogram will help us. So I'll say कि okay, this is what I can do. दो levels आप कर सकते हो. So 4 and 3, if it is one cluster, 5 is, this 6 point is lying and as an isolated point in the last cluster then, and everything else is in one cluster. Let's call it 4. 4 is one cluster which eventually has 1, 2 as well as 3. So basically all these points are in one cluster, 1, 3, 2, 5, 4. And you notice the last point 6 is in another cluster even till the last level. So you can treat it like the director, okay? And they are all again together. So if the question or the application dictates that you can only form two clusters at the end, then probably I'll go for these two levels. If it says you can make three clusters out of it, I have three distinctions, or I have three steps on my staircase for the photo, then I'll go for this level. At this level, what I have is one is different. Okay, no, 1 and 3 are combined into 4. 2 is different. No, 2 was already a part of 3. So at this level, what I have is 1 is there, 2 is there, and 4 and 6 are different. They are not forming the clusters in 1 and 2. So accordingly, I can decide in hierarchical clustering. I have that liberty. I can choose when do I want to stop. कितनी hierarchy है, कितना depth, या कितनी granularity मुझे चाहिए. I can choose. Okay. For example, a company is making t-shirts of various sizes and the order has to be given very fast. So it doesn't have much time. So it feels that most of the sports person would probably fit in a free size. So I'll just have one size which says free size. But again, let's say it is Olympics and there are players from all over the world, and based on genetics, obviously an Australian sports person would look very different from a Japanese. Okay, not to offend anybody, but they are just so different. So it says we should make custom tailored options. We should have so many sizes because one size won't fit all. Let's not have a free size. That means let's not have level one only in the hierarchical clustering. Let's have various sizes and we can decide. So there would be sizes like extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, double XL, triple XL, and then we can decide. If the time is too short, the deadline is approaching, or the budget is less, the country can say, I only want three kinds of t-shirts and I'll fit my players in these three t-shirts. What I'll do, I'll probably merge extra small and small. So I'll not make those many clusters. Hierarchical clustering gives me that freedom. You look at the dendrogram, you decide when to stop. Okay, so it's very interesting in that sense. And if you understand these properties about these algorithms, you know which should be applied where. Okay. I hope you understood hierarchical clustering, where it's used. We've only talked about the where it's used till now. How it works is fairly straightforward. You know Euclidean distances, we'll be able to do it in another 2-3 minutes. But it's very important to understand what we just discussed. Why dendrogram, how hierarchical clustering helps us, in what situations do we know where to stop. Okay, how many of you have understood how a dendrogram is going to help us, what level of detail you want to go to, be it a group photo, be it the t-shirt sizes, because it'll be economic or business decision at the end of the day. We'll know how many t-shirts we can afford to make. Do I have these many different sizes? Can I afford to be such having such variance or variety, or I'm okay with a vanilla kind of a solution? So how many of you have understood how our dendrogram will help us? Please raise your hands. All right, quite a few. Thank you. That is very assuring. Okay, moving on. What are the strengths of hierarchical clustering? It doesn't have to presume the number of clusters. So nobody's telling me I only want three kinds of t-shirts. You ask people, you take a Google form, float it, ask people about their size. and then see what clustering is applied, and eventually you can decide how many t-shirt sizes would be feasible for you to make. So you can cut the dendrogram at any proper level based on distance, based on number of clusters. If somebody says I only want two clusters, so you look where are two clusters. This is where the two clusters are. One cluster is 3 6 and everything else is one cluster. Or you can decide based on height कि I'll cut the dendrogram at this level चाहे जितने भी clusters हो. I'll decide this hierarchy. So it is very flexible. It is a very strong algorithm in that sense as compared to partitioning based K-means. Applications, intuitively, it makes sense to use hierarchical clustering in biological sciences or anywhere that there is a taxonomy or hierarchy, be it a family tree, like I said, or an organizational structure. All right. And meaningful taxonomies can actually show these things in terms of dendrogram. You might have seen certain citation graphs and research taxonomies or even knowledge graphs that make certain dendrograms. Okay. Because there is a hierarchy involved in those. Co-author network mein nahi hoga because they're all peers. But in something similar, especially in the biology context, you will have something like that. Applications, let's say US arrests. So crimes and criminals, their data set is there in different states of the US. These are the statistics, and this data was taken from GitHub clustering. You can go ahead and look at this dendrogram. Citations are very much there. So just look at partitioning based and how the clusters are almost mutually exclusive, and they are in one snapshot. You can see all the clusters. In hierarchical, they are nested and they form a dendrogram, and you can decide which height or in what number of clusters you want to cut that. So today we are going to discuss through Colab Notebook agglomerative nesting and also a numerical example for it. Please look at the dendrogram and understand these are two complementary approaches. Agglomerative means aggregation of something. Nesting means combining. Okay. So if you think that each data point is an individual cluster, won't you go bottom up as you nest those cluster points or data points? आप nesting कर रहे हो, you're joining. Every data point is individual, okay? Every data point is like an individual cluster. Now you have to club them or nest them based on similarities. So agglomerative nesting is rather a bottom-up approach, and at every step you're merging the closest pair of clusters. All right? Now consider the exact opposite. You treat the highest level as one cluster. That means now every data point is contained in it. Okay, so the topmost cluster is all the points taken together, and now you have to divisive, meaning you have to break it down into different clusters eventually so that every point becomes a cluster. It is the same dendrogram. If you look at it bottom up, it's called agglomerative nesting. If you create it top down, that is divisive analysis, that is DINA, right? So that's a top-down approach. You start with one all-inclusive cluster, taking all the data points, and you split it till when do you split? You split till every cluster is nothing but a single point. So all those points become clusters. So in that previous example, you will say that you had only one cluster, and you will stop the divisive analysis algorithm when you have 10 clusters because you had 10 data points, no? Can somebody tell me, in case of the previous example of K-means, if you apply Agnes algorithm, how many clusters do you start with? In case of the Excel that we shared, अगर हम Agnes algorithm लगा रहे हैं, so how many clusters will we start with? हमें agglomerative nesting करनी है. We have to build down one cluster at the end. How many clusters do we start with? सबके पास Excel है? इनिशियली हमारे पास कितने क्लस्टर्स होंगे? एग्लोमरेटिव नेस्टिंग अगर हम एक्सेल वाले एग्जांपल पे लगाएंगे तो
We will have 10 clusters.
yes, because that's exact number of data points that we have. All right, moving on. So इसमें हम एक स्क्वायर मैट्रिक्स बनाते हैं. We will look at every data point on both x and we'll put it on the both the rows and columns, right? And we'll find pairwise distances. Compute the proximity or distance matrix, and you repeat till only single cluster remains, because we are doing a bottom up. We are doing agglomerative nesting. So let's say these are my 12 points. It is some hypothetical example, and you're creating a proximity matrix. Proximity is the opposite of distance. Okay. If you're finding Euclidean distances, the minimum distance would be the most proximal, right? Now, how do you compute the distance and how do you merge or agglomerate? You traditionally single link method is used, which says the minimum distance is taken up, right? And there are other methods also to find the distances. So these are two clusters. How do you compare distances between clusters? Two points के बीच में तो यूक्लिडियन डिस्टेंस निकल सकता है. Two clusters के बीच में यूक्लिडियन डिस्टेंस कैसे निकलता है? You find out all the pairwise distances और जो two nearest points हैं, by the look of it I can say that this point here and this point are the closest. तो इनके बीच का आप डिस्टेंस निकाल लेते हो. That means one point, for example, I have this volleyball team, that example that we talked about. So let's say the teams have to talk to each other. So I can assign a team captain or a single point of contact, right? So what I say is that out of these two teams, these two people are closest to each other. So these are my points that will talk to each other. तो एक single link हम establish करेंगे teams के बीच में via captains. This is called single link method. Okay, complete link क्या होता है? As the name suggests, it's quite the opposite. Farthest जो दो points हैं, which are these two in this cluster, उनके बीच में हम distance निकालेंगे when we find distance between clusters. Okay, group average क्या है? सारे pairwise distances निकालो, उसका average करो. Okay, distance between centroids क्या है? You find a centroid for this cluster, you find a centroid for this cluster, then you find the distance between those two centroids. So these are the variety of methods that help us in finding distances between clusters and accordingly filling this distance matrix and accordingly updating the dendrogram. Okay, so for this example and illustration, we will be using the single link method, meaning you have to look at the closest 2 points in the clusters and you have to find the distance between them. Single linkage method or minimum min algorithm for agglomerative clustering is what is discussed here. So we have populated this matrix accordingly. Okay, so we found out these distances using this minimum. So you determine one pair of points which are closest to each other, min of the distances are taken up, and the dendrogram is built. For example, look at this entire matrix. The minimum value is obviously 0, 0 is at the diagonals because the points are at 0 distance from each other. That is not taken into consideration. The next minimum point is between 6 and 3, that is 0.11. Which is the same as that between 3 and 6. So you can actually look at the upper triangular or the lower triangular matrix also. 0.11 is the minimum. All right, that means 3 and 6 are closest to each other. So we are going to merge 3 and 6. Okay, that's exactly what we do. We merge 3, 6 and let them form a cluster. The next closest point is 0.14, which happens to be 5 and 2. That's exactly what you see in 2 and 5 here. They are merged. All right. And next is 0.15, which is 3 and 2. So 3 and 2 are actually in different clusters. So the cluster having 3 and 2 will now be merged. And in the next level, 0.15 is, okay, the 0.15 is done. So after 0.11, 14 and 15, we have 0.22, which is 6 and 4. That means 6, 3, 6, 2, 5 form one cluster. That means wherever 6 was, that cluster is merged with 4 now. Okay. And finally, the largest distances are in, 0.37, 3, 4 and so on. So cluster number 1 will then be merged with the rest at the end. And that's how the dendrogram is formed. I hope that's clear. The same nesting can be seen in the figure also, which is exactly analogous to that in the dendrogram. 2 and 5 merged together, 3 and 6 merged together. Then these two clusters merge into another cluster at the next level, which is a bigger circle containing these two circles. Then they are merged with 4 and finally with 1. This is the fifth cluster. Please notice the red points are the clusters. So we have clusters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the black Points are the exact data points, the actual data points. Now, let's try to appreciate the algorithm and the use cases. The strengths are that it doesn't have to do the number of clusters, it produces a hierarchy rather than a flat partition. But the bad part about it is there is no backtracking. Like once you've decided I only want three t-shirt sizes, it's very difficult to then break down into more t-shirt sizes, because they're already merged now. Okay, so once you decide the height or the number, there's no backtracking once the decision is made. All right, and then there can be problems like it can be sensitive to outliers and it can be difficult to handle different sized clusters. Okay, but these are the problems with both partitioning based and hierarchical clustering, right? It is inefficient for very large data sets because they'll be difficult to visualize as a dendrogram anyway, right? It's easy to group a huge number of points into k-means kind of a partitioning based clustering, but it's very difficult to notice the hierarchy in them. So if there is no hierarchy in the actual representation of that data, we should not go for this kind of clustering. And if the data points are too huge, mostly in the context of big data, we should go for partitioning based algorithms. And then there are others also. These are the two basic that we started with. There are other density based and other methods, graph based also. So for big data, we should stick to partitioning based unless there is a inherent hierarchy in the data. All right. So that's it about hierarchical clustering from my end. We go back to discussing some generic things about clustering. But before that, I think you will appreciate if we discuss the code for hierarchical clustering or agglomerative nesting. All right. Any doubts to clarify before we move to Python code for agglomerative nesting or Agnes algorithm, which is a hierarchical clustering algorithm? We will work on the iris dataset, by the way, to perform Agnes. Any doubts? Anybody? Okay, if not, then we'll move to the collab for Agnes. We are using the single linkage method. We will also plot the dendrogram. Okay, so these are the usual imports of the libraries. Then we have agglomerative clustering is imported just as k-means was there in sklearn.cluster. Agglomerative clustering is also there in sklearn.cluster. And SciPy library has cluster hierarchy in it from which we have to import dendrogram and linkage. We want to plot these things as well. We load the iris dataset. We put it in the pandas data frame and we don't necessarily have the target column. We remove the last column because this is unsupervised ML and we only want the feature names. You please notice we have said columns are feature names. The last column, the species, is not taken into account. We are making sure we are using unsupervised learning. Please notice this. Okay, shape is to be printed, so it comes out to be 150, 4. Four features, like I said, are there. The fifth column is not there. Single linkage clustering, very simple. We create a variable. You can name it anything else also. It's important to look at the RHS, which is calling out the method. Sorry, there's something wrong with the data sets. Okay, I didn't run the cell before it, so data sets has to be defined. Yeah, works fine. Now, in agglomerative clustering, we are saying number of clusters is 3 and I want to stop at 3 clusters with a single linkage and I'll fit the iris data on it. So this is the area I'm getting. That means these are the clusters that the points are assigned to. What does it mean? It means first row is assigned to cluster 1, then to 0 and some are then assigned to cluster number 2. It's almost like an outlier, okay? Only 1 or 2 rows are assigned to cluster number 2. Okay. By single linkage method, I'm also printing the linkage matrix and I'm trying to draw the figure for the dendrogram. So this is what it looks like. Most points in these clusters and then other ones. And finally, if you decide hierarchy to be like you want to stop at one cluster, you can stop here. You want to stop at at whatever number of clusters you can decide based on the height of the dendrogram. Again, evaluation part, maybe we can do it some other time. Okay, it's not feasible to do it in this given time. These are simple numerical values given and you can compute them. The reasoning behind them is very simple, which I wanted to discuss. Uh, I'm not sure if I can do that now because I still have some content left. Let me share this notebook, which is agglomerative nesting collab. And it's important for me to get a feedback of your understanding of the entire session. So, sorry. Now what I'll do is share a quiz. So, the session organizers, if you are here, please let me take the liberty of taking attendance in this form as well, right? So, I'm going to share a link for the quiz and you have to attempt it within the session time limits. And that's why I stop here. Unless there's a doubt, that's all from my end, except that I'll share the quiz, which you should be attempting now. So you can see the QR. And by the way, acknowledgements to these resources that I've referred to in creating the presentation and the collab as well. So thanks to all these great people and companies and universities. All right, so this is the quiz. I can paste the link in chat. You can scan the QR. It's only a 5 minutes. Go ahead and attempt it. You want me to paste the link? Diagnos Collab is accessible? Yes? Can somebody confirm? I've pasted the quiz link as well. How many of you are attempting it? By a raise of hands, could you just confirm? Great, Dr. Ankit, Shiv, Harshvardhan, great. So you have your 5 minutes. I'll wait. Please attempt the quiz.
Hello,
Yes, Renu.
ma'am. I'm asking to audience any queries.
Yes, we can pick up queries meanwhile, if any.
Please ask any queries if you have any.
I'm still sharing my screen, so I mean, if you want me to run through the one or two slides that were left, so to conclude, it was more about you can read about how the clustering should be evaluated. We can talk about clustering performance metrics next, and we can try clustering with different data sets. We can also talk about other clustering besides partitioning based and hierarchical. So there are, density based clusterings also and graphic graph based clusterings also. So that's more or less from my end. By the way, I also want to share the presentation with everybody right here. Let me do that. Okay, anything else, participants, that I can help you with? I've shared all slides, notebooks, Excels, and everything. I'll stop presenting now. And are my slides visible? Accessible? Can anybody confirm if the slides are accessible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So I'll stop here unless there is any doubt. And in the next few minutes, because I'm still waiting for quiz responses, we can then officially close. So I've got 12 responses so far.
Any queries, please ask. Ma'am, there is no query.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, ma'am.
So,
Thank you so much. And next session we will start on the 5:15.
okay, so I'll close the quiz now just to give you a perspective how well you've understood. Oh, great. With 18 responses, the average is 9.2, median is 10, and we have marks from 7 to 10. So, well done, everybody. I think you've quite understood the session. 21. I'll close the form to responses now. Thank you for hearing me and thank you for your queries. Thank you. I'll now leave the meet.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Next session will be start on the 5:15.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Kuldeep.
Sir, shall we start?
Definitely.
Yeah. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the last session of today. In this session, we have Dr. Vijay Kumar with us. Dr. Vijay Kumar is an associate professor and head of department in Information Technology Department, NIT Jalandhar. He received his PhD degree from NIT Kurukshetra. Previously, he received MTech and BTech degrees from Guru Jambheswar University Science and Technology, Hisar, and Kurukshetra University, Kurukshetra, respectively. He has more than 3 years of teaching and research experience at Hamirpur, at NIT Hamirpur. Prior, he had 12 years of teaching experience in various reputed organizations like Manipal University, Jaipur, and Thapar University, Patiala. He completed 2 DST SIR project and 1 CSIR sponsored research project. Presently, he is working on 1 BIS project. He has published more than 190 research papers in international conferences and journals. He has many book chapters in international reputed publishers. He has supervised many PhD and MTech theses on meta-heuristics, image mining, and data clustering. He is the reviewer of several reputed SCI journals. He is a member of ACM, CSI, International Association of Engineers, International Association of Computer Science and Information Technology, Singapore. His current research area is soft computing, data mining, deep learning, steganography, and pattern recognition. So it would be an interesting session by Dr. Vijay. I hopeful that all of you will enjoy the session. It will be our privilege that Dr. Vijay is with us for this session. I formally welcome, sir, for this session to you.
Thank you, Kuldeep. Can we start the session?
Sure, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think my screen is visible and voice is audible.
Voice is audible, screen is not yet visible to my side.
Okay.
It is visible now, sir.
Okay. Now the today topic is the recommender system using the deep learning techniques. As you have already know that every time you will either watching the movies and either you will go to some shopping mall. In that case, most of the time some recommendation will be come on your phones and either your emails will be there. And all of done these recommendation by the recommender system using these deep learning techniques. And we will discuss all these in that particular session. Today we'll discuss about that. What do you mean by the recommender system? What is the actual designing of the recommender system? And because the design behind this recommender system is that deep learning techniques that are now the time is widely used. And thereafter we'll discuss about some various deep learning architectures that will be widely used. Now the time we will discuss about the deep learning in the recommender system, then some application challenges and the future research directions. So first one we discuss about the recommender systems. The recommender system means we will design some algorithms and tool and based on the user preferences and some item they will suggest. They will recommend that yes, that particular item is important for you. For example, we will go to the Amazon. In that case, we will search something and based upon the our search history and our transaction behaviors and credit card information, they will find out that these are the actual preferences of the user will be there. And approximate 80% revenue that generated by that Amazon from the recommender system will be there. Similarly, the Netflix that will be again utilizing these recommender system, and approximately 70 to 75% these revenue will be again generated by the recommender systems. And in which, for example, you will first time visit to the Netflix and you are interested on some action movie. In that case, that next time you will again go for the Netflix account, they will recommend that action movie will be there. So depending upon the user preferences and behaviors and how much time it will spend on that particular link, in that case they will be suggest something. And when we say that some suggestions will be come out from that system, that is called the recommender systems. Recommender system, nothing we will say, it is some algorithm will be designed, and these algorithm will be predict that what is the user preference will be there and what are the actual the user will be like on the particular items will be there. All the analysis will be done by the user behavior as well as the preferences will be there. And most of the time these algorithm will be find out the interaction between the users and items will be there, as like some associations will be there. And association rule mining we will utilizing in the to design the recommender system. And besides this, we will also go for that clustering, that concept will be also utilizing to design the recommender systems. So the recommender system, it means that will be predict that yes, these are the user preferences, and based upon these we will identify that yes, these item or these particular movies are relevant to our hobbies will be there or choice will be there. In that case we will see that particular movie on Netflix or Amazon Prime will be there. And for example, if we want to purchase either laptop in that in our Amazon website or Flipkart or Snapdeal, in that case it will be also says that some printer you can also buy. And because at that time we will need the printer will be there, some discount will be shown. So all that will be done by that recommender systems. And these recommendation will be done by the user preferences will be there, the buying behavior will be there. And most of the time these information will be stored in our cookies, and in that case we'll be realize that yes, this is the buying capacity of the particular user. And based upon these always it will be recommend the item or item whose cost is either equal to your buying capacity or it will be less than your buying capacity will be there. Like upon it will be also track each and everything in transactions will be there, and credit limit will be there, and beside these the preferences will be also considered in our the recommender systems. Next one is that most of the time we'll say that we have to listen some songs in a particular app. In that case, this is the personalization will be there. Means that will be recommended to the individual user based upon their preferences. That is called the personalization will be there. Similarly, in the Amazon account, we will say some we are interested on some particular items on a particular month will be there. That is again the personalizations. And beside these is another one is that enhancing the user experience, means based on the data they will retrieve from that particular systems. In that case, another time it will be predict the better preferences according to the user will be there. And another one is that it will be increasing the engagement, because it will be interact, like it will offer some item. You will click on that particular item will be there. In that case, you will sometime you will be purchased on that particular item. Sometime we will say compare that particular item on the another website will be there. Either sometime we will find out that particular item is have some high cost. In that case, we'll go to the other website like Flipkart will be there, and then search that particular item. So likewise, we will say that that will increasing the users by offering the items. And when we click on something, it means user item interaction will be find out, and if we will buy the particular item or not. So likewise, these are some we'll say concept we'll utilizing when designing some recommender systems. And next one is that the first one we will discuss about the recommender system. Next one, what is the importance of the recommender system now the time? Presently, we are in the digital world. In that case, each and every transactions will be done through our the mobile app will be there. And when we purchase something, in that case, we'll go for the Amazon will be there, Flipkart will be there, some other e-commerce websites will be there. In that case, the main importance is that customizations, means based on recommender system will analyze the user behaviors, and based on the behavior, they will say that yes, that particular item is useful for you, and that will be also lie in your budget. So in that case, that you will provide some customized preferences or customized item presentations to you. So first one is that will provide the customizations. Otherwise, we have to go in the market. In that case, we have to check 4 to 6 different shops, and then we have to select the particular items. And well-known example is that Spotify will be there. In that case, we'll say create some personalized playlist, and based on our the listening habit, we'll create the playlist, and it will also suggest the new song that will be again matching with your listening habit. Second one is that business impact will be there. It will be also increase the sale by suggesting the relevant products will be there. As we have seen in our the Republic sales will be there. Sometime Diwali sale will be there, and Holi celebration sales will be there. In that case, the frequent item they will mentions that some sale on that particular item will be there, and in that case, that will be come under the category of the frequently buying items. So when we suggest some relevant item, in that case, their sale will be also increased. So it recommender system that will be also increase the sale. It means there will be greater impact on the business will be there. So beside these, again, for example, we have to also retain our the users. So it will always keep our the user engaged. For example, you will go for purchasing on the Amazon. In that case, it will always provide that particular item have some offer, that particular item have some offers will be there. So engagement will be always done based on your preferences, and your buying capacity will be there. Next one is that after you have purchased some items, and in that case, you will also put some rating will be there, and that rating will be also helpful some other users. So recommender system will be also incorporate this rating when it will recommend some item to the another users. So user experience, it means that will save the item, because when we go to some other shop, in that case, it will require some time. But on the online shopping, that will be also recommend some systems, recommend some items will be there. It means that will save the times by reducing the need to find some relevant items will be there. For example, you will find out some laptops will be there for your son and your daughter. In that case, for example, you will mention some specifications, and you will see some particular laptop whose specification is Core i7 will be there, then particular RAM will be there. In that case, that will recommend that yes, these are the laptop, these are your that lie in your the buying capacity. In that case, there is no need to go for some suggestions, and they will recommend that yes, these are the items, and from that particular site we can purchase the item. So it will also improve the satisfaction by offer some relevance, and timely recommendation will be also there. So these are the importance that we will use the recommender systems. And next one is that what is the general framework of the recommender system? In that case, we will divide into the mainly 3 parts. And these are the data pipeline and training pipeline. Then we'll say that interface pipeline will be there. And in the data pipeline, first is that we will go for the data acquisition. We'll capture the data will be there. When we go for the recommender system, in that case, user details will be there. And beside these, that will be also require the information about your credit cards or your online transactions will be there. So all will be, these information will be collected over the data acquisitions. And after that, we will say that will be, all information will be stored on some storage data space will be there. And then we will go provided all these data to the first phase, that is the data preparation will be there, in which we will eliminate some missing value, some inconsistent value that will be removed, because sometime you will fill the home. In that case, only will field that are the necessary. Sometime we will not put the information like what is your annual income will be there, what is your monthly income will be there, and what is your habit will be there. All these we will eliminate it, and in that case that particular field will be put as a null values. So data preparation, we will eliminate these null values, some missing values, and sometime some inconsistent data will be removed. So data pre-preparation, that will be come in the feature pre-processing will be there, and sometime that particular phase is also known as a feature engineering. We will discuss in the deep learning, that will be also known as a feature engineering will be there. And after that, we will provide these data to the training trainer will be there. In that case, that particular trainer will be used for the model validations, and in that case your model evaluation, that will be done either offline mode and online mode will be there. And again, the trainer will be generate some candidate generations, and these candidate generation, that is very similar as like in the association rule minings. And after that, it will produce some ranking will be there. That particular item have the rank 1 will be there, that particular item have rank 2 will be there, depending upon their rating will be, and their preferences. And after that, we have some inference pipeline will be there. In that case, we will retrieve some informations, then filtering will be done on the information, then based upon these, we will provide the scoring and ranking. And again, these particular module will be connected with the deployment when we design some general recommender system. Then we'll deployment on some particular real life scenario. Then after that, monitoring is the important one. And for example, some data that is not consistent, that will not provide the better value, not validations will be there. In that case, feedback will be goes to the data preparation phase again. And after that, these feedback loop, we will provide some business values. Business values means we will provide some rating will be there. And when we go for these recommender system, in that case, very well known is that collaborative filtering will be there. And most of the time when we go for the collaborative filtering, in that case, the ranking will be reproduced as if, for example, this is the R CAF will be there, that is the UT of I will be there. And I will be represented as a, when we go for this I, this is a matrix will be there. U is again the matrix, and that particular matrix that will be represented by some dimension, because when we go for the U and I is a matrix, in that case that have some dimensions. And you have the dimension of the k cross n will be there. And when we go for the k is the latent factor, just represented here, that these are the latent factors we are using. When we mention like n is the number of users, because collaborative will be used, that collaborative decision will be there depending upon the user will be available. Then I is again represented by the k into m will be there, and k is the latent factor, and m represented by the number of items that will be utilizing here. So based upon these multiply of these factors, that will provide a ranking of some product will be there. So most of the time when we go for the collaborative filtering, in that case we will not consider the single user, we will be utilizing that number of the users will be there, and as well as the number of items will be there, because we have utilizing that as a matrix. Multiplications will be there. So in that case, the first one is that user item interaction matrix we will mostly utilizing in your the collaborative filtering, in which we will mention as a user and item, there's some interactions between them, and we will find out that if the user is favored to particular item or not, or some based upon some ranking will be there. So in that case, the row will be representing as a user and column will be representing as an item, and then we will say this value that will be representing by the interactions will be there. The first concept we will utilizing here, that user item interaction matrix will be there. And based upon these, for example, in the always will go for a movie, like either it will be rating 1 to 5 will be there. So for example, for in that case, we'll like the movie is here, then user will be here. So user 1, that will be for movie 1, that will rating the 2 will be there. That 2 that will be represented as a rating for that particular user will be allocate the movie 1 as a rating. Next one, matrix we will use in the collaborative filtering, that is that user similarity. It means we have to find the user with the similar preferences will be there. because in collaborative filtering we will say that the number of users which have the similar preferences that will put in one particular group will be there. So in that cases mainly we will utilizing the concept of the clustering will be there. So in that case, for example, user A and user B both have the rated similar movies that are highly rated. So likewise, some user have the same preference. For example, user 1 and user 2 both prefer the action movie. In that case, we'll put only one particular group will be there. And user 3 and user 4 that will prefer to the romantic movie. In that case, that will put on the cluster 2 will be there. So likewise, we will find out the user with the same preference. They'll put in one particular cluster. So in that case, user to user similarity concept will go for the clustering concept will be there. Next one, when we go for the collaborative filtering, another criteria will be their item to item similarities. It means we have to find out the item that are similar based on the user interactions will be there. And for example, like for one user that will like the movie X, there will be also like the movie Y will be there. So in that case, the particular user will be recommend that you should also go for the movie Y will be there. So likewise, this is called the item to item similarity. Means your item, your based on the user interaction, we will find out these item are the similar. One will be there. So these are we will mainly go for these three type of the criteria we will utilizing in our collaborative filtering. Next one is the content filtering will be there. It means based upon the content, we will find out some ranking will be there. So in that case, mainly we will utilizing these mathematical formula. This is RUI will be there. This is the ranking of U for the user and I for the item will be there. That is depending upon some functions. We will utilizing some interaction. This function that will mention that user interaction with the item will be there. In that case, F of UI that will be considered here. And in that case, we will also mention some theta. Theta that will be mentioned as the parameter for your models. That will provide some interaction between the item and models will be there. So this is the parameter of your models that will be utilizing for user and item interactions. So U that will be indicated as a user and I will be indicated as items will be there. So we will find out based upon their user and item interaction based upon some models parameter and that will provide some ranking will be there. So in content based mainly we'll use these user item features will be there. It means we will consider these features and that will be representing as a feature vectors will be there. And if we will find out some, this is the general formula for the recommender systems. And if we will go for the content based, in that case, we have to derive this one that is equal to RUI cap that will be represented by the theta of UT of phi of I will be there. Because we will mention here that we have to use these item features. So in that case, that particular theta that will mention that user preference vector will be there. So user preferences that will be represented by some vector form is here. And when we say that a phi I, that will be represented by this feature vector will be there. This is that a feature vector of I. It means we have to multiply by the user preference vector and the feature vector of some item will be there. So that is, we will say the content based our approach will be there in the mathematical form. And this is the general formulation we will be utilizing for the recommender system. Just a minute, I think. Yeah, this is the general recommendation system will be there. So it means most of the time when we go for that item feature, in that case we have to analyze that item attributes will be there. And when we in that case we have to, what is the item features? In that case the item name will be there, the keyword will be there, descriptions will be there. And after that there is also some rating will be also there. So all these will consider as the item features. Means beside their generic and keywords and description, we will also consider sometime rating will be also there. And for example, if we'll most of the time our child that are most interesting in that science fiction movies, in that case first time user will see the science fiction movies, and next time that will be also recommend that you have to see that particular science fiction movies. And most of the time when we go for these item feature, in that case you have to find out some similarity between the data points again. And in that case we will go for that cosine similarity that is widely used in the content based filtering will be there. So in that case you have to measure the similarity between the item, and that particular item will find out based upon the features will be there. And these are the feature, generic, keyword and description that will be find out. And Most of the time when we find out the similarity, in that case, these particular generic and keywords will be utilizing. And again, when we're utilizing these generic and keyword, then we'll go for the bag of word will be there. And when we go for the bag of word, in that case, either we'll go for the tokenization, either we'll go for that vector creation techniques will be there. These are the two techniques that will be widely used when we go for that bag of words. Okay. So in that case, we'll say, for example, if a user will watch some Inceptions, in that case, that will be also recommend some Interstellars will be there, because both are the science fiction movies will be there. So that is the content-based filtering. Next one is that hybrid recommender systems. When we say there is a hybrid recommender system, it means we have to combine both the content based and collaborative based. In the collaborative, we will utilizing the group of the users and items will be there. But in the content based, we mainly targeting that item features will be there. So when we go for these combination of the recommender system, in that case, we have to combine these both the collaborative as well as the content based. So in that case, your mathematical equation will be right like R of UI cap. That particular ranking will be there. Ranking means user and item ranking that will be decided, and that is the combination of the both of these content-based filter and collaborative filtering will be there. It means most of the time we will go for that ensemble techniques, and there is a reason behind to use these ensemble techniques and hybrid technique is that we have to combine the strength of the both approaches will be there. So likewise, we will utilizing both the content-based and collaborative-based. So in that case, we will use like alpha is a one particular parameter that will provide the balance between these two models. So we'll write some alpha and beta. There is a two models will be there. And in that case, we will take some function f of cb. This is the collaborative filtering will be there, content filtering will be there. So first we'll go for the content-based filtering that have some function like a user will be there, items will be there. And after that, we will also take in like these are the parameter. This parameter will be the model parameter will be there for the content based filtering. It means we use the user and items, and then we will take some model parameter for content based filtering. And again, that will multiply some alpha will be there. Alpha that are the weight that will be provide the balance between the content based and collaborative based filterings. And next one is that we will go for another one that is that content-based filterings, and in that case CF will be right here the content-based filtering. Then we'll write here the UI, user and item will be there. Then we have to mention some parameter that is the CF. So CF is mentioned as the content-based filtering. This is the content-based filtering, and when we CB, this is the collaborative filtering will be there. So it means we have to balance between them, and after that we have to take the combinations. So that is the mathematical representation of these content-based filterings and collaborative filterings. And these particular CFB, we will mention here that FCB. FCB, that is the function that will match from the user and item interaction. And after that, we will mention here that this particular theta of CB, that is the model parameter. Similarly, here we will provide as the CF is a content-based filtering will be there. It means that will combine both the strength and weakness. And most of the time, we will say that Netflix not to use only single the collaborative and content-based filtering. That will use the combination of these two. It means that will use utilizing the content of the movies will be there as well as that user behavior will be there. So in that case, that user behavior will be provided by the collaborative filtering, collaborative-based methods will be there, and movie content, movie attributes that will be retrieved by that particular content-based filtering. So it means that we will combine the strength of both approaches. And the advantage, it will overcome the limitation. This is the cold start problem. The well-known problem that is in recommender system that is called the cold start problem. It means, for example, some new item, new user will be entered in your system. In that case, we don't have any preferences about any items will be there. Similarly, some new item will be introduced in the system. In that case, recommender have no idea about that new items. So that type of that particular recommender system is unable to predict the ranking of that particular user and items will be there. So in that case, that will be eliminate that particular cold start problems, because based on the user behaviors and content that in the previous which is very similar to that particular user, that will be eliminated in some limit will be there, and it will provide some more accurate and diverse recommendation. Again, some problem will be in the hybrid recommender systems, what we'll say that it is provide better results as compared to the collaborative and content based filterings. And most of the time, like a recommender system, for example, recommender system have to recommend some new movies, and in that case, based upon the content and their generic and their cast, they will be recommend that particular movie to some users, and if they have some similar preferences will be there, and if a particular user will be interested in some particular actors will be there. Likewise, these some content will be utilizing in the recommender systems. Next one is the designing of the recommender system. The first one I have mentioned, like data collection is the important one. It means we have to collect the data. And when we say that we have to collect the data, in that case, either we'll be clicking on some particular link, some rating will be there, purchase habit will be there. All of these will be utilizing for collecting the data will be there. And beside these, we will also collect the metadata. And metadata means we have the collect the data, some about some product will be there, some movie will be there. All generics will be collected from these scenarios. So because we have the two items here, user and items, so we have to collect the data about both the user as well as the item will be there. Next one is the data pre-processing. And first step is that we have collect the data. Next one is that you have to pre-processing. We have mentioned the previously. The data pre-processing will be the another important step. And in that case, we have to handle some missing value, and we have to normalize the data, and we have to clean the data for the modeling purpose will be there. The reason behind is that handling these missing values and normalization is that because that particular attribute will be, if some values is not consistent and not provide the accurate value, in that case it will be greatly impact on the accuracy of our models will be there. So cleaning of the data is very, very important. Similarly, when we go either we'll go for the machine learning or the deep learning, both cases the data pre-processing is the important part will be there. And when we discuss about like a deep learning, so before that machine learning will be also there. And the machine learning, the reason behind to develop this machine learning is the statistical modeling of the existing models will be there, how to simulate that particular models in the mathematical formulations. So that will be utilizing the machine learning will be there. And the deep learning, that is a subset of your the machine learning part. The first one is that like AI is here. After the AI, we will say this is the machine learning, and within that particular, the deep learning will be there. So sometimes some people will say that deep learning is a different one. It is not the different one. It is the subset of your machine learning. It is again a subset of your AI will be there. And again, the main problem in our the machine learning, that is the feature extraction will be there. That is the main major problem. In that case, most of the time we'll go for the surf will be there, and hog will be there. And these particular type of the feature extraction technique will be utilizing. Again, that depending upon some data will be there, and this technique will not provide the consistent results on every data sets, because again, it is depending upon the data will be there. And the problem is that feature extraction in our the machine learning, to remove these problem, the data learning and this particular deep learning, that is also known as your the feature engineering will be there. This automatic extraction of the features from the given data set. But before that, you have to go that particular part is that the data pre-processing will be there. Otherwise, we will provide that inconsistent data and not clean data. In that case, it will not provide that better results, and your model will be produce some error will be there. Most of the time, we will see that some students will be used like RNN will be there, CNN will be there, LSTM will be there, transformer will be there. But they don't know about that mathematics behind these models. Only they will be utilizing as a black box. So in that case, because the property of that algorithm is that when we provide some input data, it will always produce some output. And this is the basic property of the algorithms will be there. So when we provide some input, in that case, that will be not fit on our models, and that will be always produce some garbage value, and that will be not up to the point will be there. In that case, some parameter will be mapped, and some parameter setting will be done. But we don't blindly apply these model on our data. In that case, first we have to find out the nature of the data will be there. It might be possible that data have some symmetric nature, some have some skewed nature will be there. So based upon these, we have to first find out the nature of the data will be there. After that, we have to find out that what type of the value exactly present in the data set. Because data set have only the two things will be there: number of the feature and number of the instances. And only these two things that will be decide that the accuracy and some model training will be there and validations will be there. But we are blindly apply these algorithms like CNN, RNN, LSTMs and transformers will be there. So first we will find out the nature of the data will be there. What type of the data will actually present and how we have to tackle these data. Sometime your data have either either the numerical values will be there. Sometime character value will be also present, and how we have to tackle these values. Sometime that a mixture of the data will be available. So in that case, the different techniques will be there. Similarly, for example, in the last few years, we will discuss about like K-means algorithms will be there. In the K-means algorithm, that will be the basic algorithm in our the clustering techniques. In that case, most of the time we'll go for that Euclidean distance. But beside the Euclidean distance, lot of the another distance measure will be also there. We will don't go in that particular site. Only every books that will mention here that you have to use that Euclidean distance. We are barely use the Euclidean distance. But again, the problem in the Euclidean, when we use the K-means algorithm with the Euclidean distance, in that case, that is only prefer for the hyperspherical clusters. Of the nature of the cluster is differ. In that case, that particular distance measure is not appropriate. And for that case, you have to go for some other distance measure. If we will, I will ask the questions that who is the inventor of some another distance measure. In that case, beside these Euclidean distance, sometime we'll go for the marathon distance will be there, and the city block distance will be there, and bike road distance will be there. But beside these, one another important one is that the Minkowski's and marathon. Some other one will be also present. That is called the Melon-based distance. And we don't use that particular distance measure. And that particular Melon-based distance measure developed by the one particular Indian scientist. And that is that Melon-based, this is the founder of ISI Kolkata, Indian Statistical Institute of Kolkata will be there. But still we're not using the distance measure that provides the better results. Similarly, for example, data will present some symmetry will be there. And again, this symmetry will be also present in our data because nature will provide the symmetry everywhere. Our face have the symmetric in nature. Similarly, that type of the data symmetry can also present in our data, but we not target the symmetry. And in that case, when we go for the like distance measure, symmetry can be also targeted. Like Shiparna Shah that have developed the line symmetry based distance measure and point symmetry based distance measure will be there. That should be considered when we're calculating some distance between the data points. So it means that don't blindly apply these algorithms. First, we have to know about the nature of the data. After find out that yes, these are the nature, then we have to go for that particular algorithm. Like most of the time, we'll go for the RNN will be there. But RNN is a problem that is that the gradient will be vanished and exploit in some particular points. In that case, we have to go for the LSTM will be there. And if the data is in sequential nature, in that case, we have to go for that particular models. So likewise, the nature we have to decide that which model we have to select. Okay. The next one is that selection of appropriate algorithm. Either we have to go for in the recommended systems. Either we have to go for the collaborative filter. Either we have to go for the content-based will be there or hybrid will be there. So that will be decided in the model selections. Next one is that we have to select that yes, this model is appropriate for your data. These are the models will be there. Then we have to train the model on the historical data. And because our historical data will be present here, in that case, we will train the models. And after that, we have to evaluate the performance. And for that case, mainly we'll go for like a precision recall will be there, RMSE will be there, RMEA will be also there. Mean absolute error we can also find out in our the recommender system. Beside these, some other performance metrics will be also present. And after we'll say that the model is appropriate, in that case the deployment will be done. And in that case, when we deploy the model on the real life scenario, that will be recommend some data points. Next one, when we go for the data collections, in that case we have mentioned some user interactions will be there. User interactions means either some rating will be there, some click on some particular link, then purchase and browsing history. That is another important one. Most of the time your information will be stored in your cookies, and you will browse something. In that case, the information will be stored in cookie. That will be, if you want to secure, in that case you can destroy your cookie after some times. Next is the item metadata will be there because every product have some descriptions, Similarly, the movie have some journeys will be there, and music have some tags will be there. So these are the actually the item metadata. Next one is the contextual data that will be also there, because that will provide that time of the interactions, because sometime we will say sales will be there. In that case, that will provide that today offer on that particular item 50% discount, 60% discount will be there. Like this is the time will be important, means that particular time we have purchased something, then the time, then particular cost and quality will be different. When we take another time, in that case that will be differ. So that will be also take the data, like a time of interactions will be there. And beside this, location is also matter, because sometimes you have ordered something that will mentions that that item cannot be delivered on that particular location, because that will carry some delivery charges much higher as compared to the benefit gain from that particular items. So location is again we will consider, then the device used will be also there. So all these information will be collected from the data, and they will come under the data collections. When we collect the data, in that case some challenges will be find out, and that is the data sparsity will be there, because most of the user will be only interact with some few items. Because for example, some women's they have to purchase either the sari will be there and some suit will be there. In that case that have some particular set of the choices will be there. Similarly, for example, in the men, in that case they will be only interested on some particular type of the jeans, and in particular company will be there. So likewise, that is the main problem in the data collection, because data sparsity, and only the user will be intact, only few items will be there, and only they will purchase that particular items. Next one is the noise. As I mentioned, some fake review will be also possible. Now the time you have already very well known about the deep fake will be there, and that is widely used in our the imaging techniques. But beside these, some noise will be also available, and that will provide some incorrect and inaccurate data will be there. And bias, that is again the problem. There is called data biasing will be there. It means data will be not represent all the user group globally, that only say that some particular user that will be biased to particular event, some particular user will be biased towards another data will be there. The biasing will be also there when we collect the data. So in that case, there is mainly three challenges: data sparsity, noise, and biasing that will be there. And another one is the data pre-processing. We mentioned like some null values will be there. In that case, we have to eliminate these null values. And when we have to handle these missing value, null value, in that case, sometime we'll go for that mean imputations will be there, or matrix factorization that can be also utilizing. It means based upon that similar user, we will replace these values. Most of the time, we'll go for the mean value. Again, when we go for the mean value, that is again problem will be there, because that is affected from the noise will be there. Okay, so again the problem is when, for example, we have to find out the mean of the 10 and 30 will be there. This is the, we will say, expected value. In that case, the mean will be come out that only the 20, and some outlier will be added. We will not say the noise, some outlier can be also added. In that case, for example, the value will be added here, the 100. So in that case, the mean will be changed. We will write here like this way by 3. That will be replaced by 20 by some higher values. So when we replace these missing value with the mean, in that case, that is again susceptible to some outliers. And most of the time we'll go for the medium value will be there. Sometime the best possibility, that is the probability functions will be used to predict the data. But it will be not provided exact solution. It will only will say approximate solution will be provided. So we'll say some probability function will be used to predict the value is here based upon some we'll say some user preferences. Next one, when we go for the data pre-processing, in that case, either we'll go for that feature scaling will be there, and that is that normalization and standardization. Because some features which value is very large, in that case, that particular feature will be dominate. We have to eliminate these features, and we have to eliminate means we have to normalize these features so that it will be not greatly impact on that particular another data. In that case, we will go for that feature scaling will be there. First one is that normalization. In the normalization, normally we will say x new, that is equal to x minus x minimum divided by the x maximum minus x minimum. This is the standard formula for the normalization. And another one is that we will not utilizing these mean and maximum value. Only we utilizing the mean and standard deviations. And in the most of the papers, you have find out some values like this way. Most of the time, you will write this. It means we will not use a single value, we will use that mean and standard deviation. The first part is known as the mean value, another part is standard deviations. Because in our the deep learnings and our the machine learning, most of the time we will utilizing these random functions. The reason behind the random function is that we will not stuck in our the local optima. To avoid these local optima, we will mostly use these random function. So to avoid these local optima, so in that case, every time you will run the algorithms multiple times, then we'll take the mean value and standard deviation. If the value is very, very low, in that case, that particular model is your robust model will be there. It means that provide a consistent results. For example, another one is that +6 plus minus 0.001. It means that particular model 2 is more robust as compared to model 1. This is the model 1 will be there. So likewise, we will always take the value like a mean and standard deviations. And when we go for like a data preprocessing, normalization and scaling, the normalization that will provide the scale 0 to 1 will be there. And normally we'll rating of the movie is the 1 to 5. But in that case, we'll again convert into the normalization 0 to 1 depending upon our applications. Next one is that feature engineering. When we say that feature engineering means extraction of the features will be there. It means we not select. There is a difference between the feature selection and extraction. Means selections means there is a number of available features will be there. Among these feature only will select some subset of the features. When we say that feature extraction, it means we will extract the new features from the given data will be there. It means we will extract feature engineering means extract some significant features from that will be more applicable for our the content based systems. And most of the time that movies will be represented by as a factor, a generic and keyword forms. Okay. Next one is that when you go for that model selection, either will go for the collaborative filters and content filters will be there, and in which collaborative filters filtering will utilizing that users will be there. Content filter, it means we will mostly targeting that feature of items will be there. So in that case, there is a similar user and some particular these similar user will be listen some particular same music will be there. So these are the difference between the collaborative and the content based filtering. Next one is the model filtering. When we go for the model filtering, in that case, training in model training, we have to split the data, and most of the time we will go for the 80 and 20, but it's not fixed that we have to always take it is 80-20. It can be the 70-30 will be there, and it can also the 60-40 will be there. You can also take the 50-50 also, depending upon your needs will be there. But most of the time we'll go for the 80 and 20% will be there. And that is the divide the data. The given data set will be divided into the two parts, training and testing. When we go for that particular, that is only in our the machine learning techniques. When we go for the deep learning, in that case, that particular data will be divided into the three parts, and that is the training, validation, and the testing will be there. So these are the actually three parts will be there. So in which we will say first we'll train the data, and in the validation we will setting the hyperparameters will be there. So model hyperparameter tuning that will be done on that particular validation phase will be there, and after that we will be to test our model on the testing phase. So that particular 80% will be, for example, 60 and 20 will divide here, and 20 for the testing is here. So that particular 60 is differ from the 20% is here. That is the important one, because most of the time in the machine learning we will take only the two set. This is the training and testing. But when we go for the deep learning, in that case there is a three different set. Training will be another one, validation is another one, and testing will be the another one. And again, these instances are the independent from each others. Most of the time when we train some models, in that case that have suffer from the two different problems will be there. I will discuss just a minute. We have some. Where is the board? Okay, no problem. We will just use another slide and then we'll mention here. Yeah. So in that case, we just assume that I want to mention that there is any problem in our the training time. There is a two problems is here. That is called the underfitting problem, and another one is that overfitting problem will be there. These are two problems that will come out when we go for the train some models. And when we go for the overfitting, in that case the problem is due to our low bias and high variations will be there. When our model have some problem like a low bias and high variation, in that case the problem is the overfitting will be there. When we go for the underfitting, in that case we will say that is the problem is for the low variance and high bias will be there. So bias and variation that are responsible for that particular problem. And again, when we say that overfitting means your model is is well fit to the training data will be there. But it is not appropriate, not able to handle that the new instances will be there. Just assume that our child will be prepare very well for the JEE or NEET exam, and it will be score very high in our the test series, but it will be not able to score that particular in our the main exam will be there. That is called the overfitting problems will be there, because it is perform very well in the test seasons, but it is not able to predict the particular scores, will not able to achieve that particular score. So it means we will say like this one, this is only due to the low bias and high variations will be there. And when you go for the overfitting, it means our training accuracy that is high, but testing accuracy is low. So that is the responsible for our the overfitting. That is most that problem will be occur, and most of the time we will go for the gradient clipping type or some other techniques will be there. We'll discuss in the upcoming slide. Next one is that underfitting. When we say underfitting, it means your the low variance and high bias will be there, and in that case, both of these training accuracy and testing accuracy both are the low, in which that overfitting or the training accuracy is high, but in the testing accuracy will be down, but underfitting both are the down will be there. And if we will say like for find out some complexity and error, just we will write some diagram is here. This is the model complexity, because every model has a different complexity will be there, and based upon these complexity again the problem there is some particular bias and this particular variance. And for example, in the y-axis, we will take some error is here. And just assume that when we increase that particular model complexity, the bias will be decreases. So this type of the particular curve will be created for the bias. That is the bias. When the complexity will be increases, in that case, our the variance will be increases. Decrease the variance and decrease the bias and increase the variance. The variance will be find out like this way. And this is a line that will be called the journal data fitting will be there. We'll write here, and if we'll find out the error, that will be find out on the that particular phase. That is known as the total error will be there. So likewise, when model complexity will be increased, in that case bias will be decreases, but variance will be increases. That will be there. And again, we will say like if we'll take some examples to show what do you mean by the underfittings and something like data. Let's assume that this type of the data will be there, and in that case we find out like this type of the curve will be there. Curve is not fitted, and that is called the underfitting problem will be there. And for example, if we'll say like this type of the data will be there, like, and curve is fitted properly, it means that particular curve have the low bias and low variation will be there. It means that is the right fit will be there. So that will be considered as a here. And if we will say it will be not fitted properly, and sometime it is fitted on the training time, but it is testing time is not, there is the overfitting will be there. So that is the problem that will be occur during the training time will be there. Next one is that optimization algorithms, and in that case either we'll go for the stochastic gradient descent will be there, that is utilizing, and sometime we'll go for the ADAM. ADAM is the optimizer that will be used. These both stochastic gradient descent and ADAM both are utilizing in our the deep learnings. And the main reason is that they will be update the weight, model weight, to reduce the predictive error will be there. Okay. So in that case, we will consider the weight that will be minimize the predictions, and outputs will be there. We have to minimize these things. Okay. And next one is that model fitting. So this type of the data we will find out normally like training and validation. We have mentioned the validations means parameter, hyperparameter setting will be there. Yes, yeah. Next one is the confusion metric. Just a minute here. Performance evaluation. Next we'll go for the performance evaluation. In that case, we will go for some metrics like precision will be there, recall will be there, and root mean scale will be there. So that are the some particular performance evaluation that will be mostly done. And beside these, most of the time we will go for the cross validation. It means the reason behind the cross validation is that you are ensure that model will be generalized well to some unseen data. And for that case, we will split the data. Most of the time, like for example, you have some data set like this way. We'll provide here the some token bucket like a B1, B2, B3, and B4. We have divide here mentioned the 5 part. We will divide here 5 part. B5 will be there. So in that case, we just assume that that particular part will be used as a training and that will be used for the testing phase will be there. Next one, we will use that as a testing phase. That will be used, the training will be there. So likewise, one by one part that will be used as a testing purpose. And for the simplicity, just we assume that only we will say like this particular part, B1. B1 will be used as a testing for iteration number 1. First iteration we will use as a for testing. B2 on the another iteration we will use as a testing. For iteration 2 will be there. For B3 will be used as a test case or testing purpose, that for the iteration 3. And B4 that will be used as a testing as a iteration 4 will be there. B5 that will be used as a testing set for iteration number 5 will be there. But when we use that B1 as a testing, in that case B2 to B5 that will be used as a training purpose. Similarly, when we use the B2 as a testing for iteration 1, in that case we utilizing the B1, B3 to 5 that will be utilizing as a training purpose. Similarly, for example, in the B3 as a testing, in that case we will use like a B1, B2, and after that B4 and B5 for the training purpose. Similarly, when we utilizing here the B4 as a testing, in that case B1 to B3 and B5 will be used as a training purpose will be there. Similarly, in the B5 as a testing part, in that case B1 to B5 will be utilizing as a training purpose. So these are the cross validation, means we have to test our model on every part of the data will be there. It means that will provide some general availability that it will be able to capture the data and it will be able to test in each and every part. So that is the mainly the generalization purpose will be there. And the next one is the confusion matrix will be there. That is very well known and everyone knew about this confusion matrix. This is the predicted class will be there. This is the actual class, and in that case we will find out the true positive. When we will say both are the come out the positive and negative, true positive will be there. When we say the actual is the positive, it will predict that negative will be there. That is known as a type 2 error. When we say it is actually negative, but it will predict it as a positive, that will known as a type 1 error will be there. And when we say both are the negative, that is called the true negative. So it means we are only interested on that particular portion. And when we have some data on that particular prediction on this particular phase, it means some problem in our models will be there. We have to eliminate these type 1 and type 2 errors. And beside these, we have some sensitivity. We have to find out some model sensitivity. That is the true positive divided by the true positive plus false negative. It means we have to only consider that particular portion is here. TP plus Fn that will be considered here as a denominator, and numerator part is only the TP will be there. When we go for the specificity, in that case, we have to consider these true negative and false positive. It means that particular lower one that will be act as a denominator part. And that particular true positive will be taken as a numerator. Here the true negative that will be taken as a numerator part will be there. So you can easily recall by when we design something, in that case there is no need to cram. Only we have to find out that which part is taken as a sensitivity, which part is a specificity will be there. When we go for the precision, we will write here the precision is here. This is the TP is the first one. And then we have to only just check this particular portion is here. TP and FP. There is a precision will be there. Similarly here that negative predicted value that will find out. That is the TN divided by the TN plus FN. And accuracy means we have to go for this one. Only we are interested in the diagonal one part will be there. TN, TP and TN divided by all the data items. These are the actual way to recall what do you mean by the sensitivity, specificity, precisions, and negative predicted will be there and accuracy will be there. That will be utilizing. Next one is the deployment will be there. In the deployment, it means real-time recommendations will be there, means server will be, the CV recommendations will be required in the real time based upon our that user interactions. And because we have to deploy our model on some real-time scenario, in that case, the recommendation will be done based upon both the user and item interactions will be there. And either the net we go for the Netflix and Amazon that will recommend some product when we browse something, because that recommendation will be done on your the previous browsing history. And next one is that your scalability and latency, that is the important one, because if it is not able to handle the large amount of the data, then it is very difficult. So most of the time, like a distributed computing framework, like Apache Spark, that will utilizing in that particular Amazons and some other things will be there, because distributed computing framework that are able to handle that large scale of the data, and that will ensure that low latency will be there. Our important when we design some algorithm, in that case latency should be low. For example, you will go to some ATM and you want to withdraw some money. In that case, ATM will take either 3 or 4 minutes or 10 minutes. In that case, that particular algorithm or that particular system is not appropriate for the real time deployment will be there, because we want the response, quick response will be there. Either you have designed your algorithm that is much more secure and there is a lot of the check will be there, but the latency should be low. That is the important one will be there. So low latency will be required, and that your algorithm should be handle the large amount of the data. Next one, we have mentioned that A/B testing will be there. It means we have to test the performance of the recommender systems in our real world scenarios. And in that case, we have to compare the two algorithms. A by B means two different algorithms will be deployed, and then check whether the difference between their performance or not. Or performance will be find out based on that user engagement with the data items. And next we will go for some basics of our the deep learning, because all these about these particular recommender systems. Next one, we have mentioned that recommender system will be utilizing using some deep learning will be there. Deep learning, that is a specialized branch of our machine learning. I have mentioned that deep learning, this is a subset of our the machine learning will be there. But in that case, we will say we use the neural network with the multiple layers will be there, and these layers will be help to capture some features. And these features will be the fine-grained features will be there. For example, you will provide some image, and in that case there is no need to find out apply the hog will be there, surf will be there, shift will be there. These algorithm will be not applied, because these algorithm apply in our machine learning to check the features. And mostly we'll say these deep learning layers, they will be extract like some lines will be there, edges will be there, some colors features will be there. Based upon these, they will combine some subparts of the images, and then they will be extract the information. So traditionally we will require the feature engineering, but now the time deep learning is now itself is a feature engineering. It will automatically learn the feature from the given data. Second one is that it is able to learn the complex pattern. Most of the time, deep learning is widely used in the computer vision, like in natural language processing. It will be apply. It will also apply in the speech recognition. In image recognition, is widely used. So we'll say that particular have some tool that will be able to extract the complex features. The problem is that our machines are not able to capture the pattern recognition capabilities. But now that these deep learning is able to capture the pattern recognition capabilities will be there at certain point. We'll not say that 100% capable, but at certain point it is capable. And that particular uses some neural network with the multiple layers, because previously if you will see like a artificial neural network, this is a very old concept will be there, not a new. And we have to thanks the GPU will be there. When the GPU will become into the real world, in that case we are able to execute these models. Otherwise previously we are not able to execute these large models will be there. So deep learning means some number of the layer will be increasing, but previously we will take only 2 or 3 layers. First the input layer will be there, then the hidden layer, then the output layers. But now the times we'll say millions of the layers will be there, and they are in the layers, the number of the neurons is also increased to very high levels. So when we go for that, a number of layer will be increased, and every layer the number of neurons will be increased. In that case, the parameter tuning is very difficult. Parameter tuning means there is a millions of the parameters will be there, and that have to the set. So when we go for the differentiation between these deep learning and machine learning, the question arises that most of the time the deep learning will be very slow as compared to the machine learning, but it is not always true. We'll say that when we go for the training phase, in that case, the deep learning will take a lot of time, because there's a number of the neurons will be there, number of the layers will be there. In that case, for the training duration, it will take time. But when you go for the testing, when your train is more trained, after that, in the testing time, it will take very less time as compared to the machine learning. So in the training time, it will always take the more time. The deep learning model will take more time as compared to the machine learning. But during the testing phase, during the testing durations, we'll find out that deep learning are much faster as compared to that machine learning will be there. Second one, we have find out the difference when we compare these. Either we have to go for the machine learning and deep learning. The another one is that data dependency will be there. So deep learning have some data dependency. Means when we have the large amount of the data, in that case we are able to well train the deep learning model. When we have the less amount of the data, in that case we are not able to train the deep learning up to that particular accuracy will be there, up to that particular limit will be there. So in that case we'll go some trick like data augmentation will be done, some cropping, some rotations, all of these things will be done to increase the data. But again, some limitations will be there. If we have some limited data, in that case we'll go for that machine learning will be there. If we have the large amount of the data, in that case we have to go for the deep learning. And it means your deep learning, the data dependency will be there. And again, when we find out some like this type of the, we will take here the data and performance on the another y-axis. In that case, the machine learning will be increased. After some time, it will be like this way. This is the machine learning will be there. But when we go for the deep learning, it will be increases. So likewise, we'll say that it is a data dependency. Second one, when we compare these deep learning and machine learning, in that case, it is again the hardware dependence. It means we will require some GPU. Either we'll go for the STX 100 will be there and RTX 4090i will be there. This type of the GPU will be required. But in machine learning, that type of the hardware is not required, because GPU high computing power is required, because there is a million of the parameter we have to adjust. We have the number of the layers is very large. Within the layer, number of neurons is very large. So likewise, we will say this particular deep learning, that is the data dependency will be there, as well as a hardware dependency will be also there. And as compared to the machine learning, we'll compare this one. Okay. So likewise, this is we'll say this is not a new concept of the deep learning. Just we'll say that this is a very old concept. We have just renew it, and the number of the layer will be increasing, neurons will be increasing. Or just we'll say this is a old wine in the new bottle will be there. Labeling will be changed here. Next one is the neural network architecture. We have like this type of the structures will be there. This is multiple hidden layers, and we'll say input layer that will receive some data either in form of the text will be there, and either we'll say images will be there. When we taking for the text, it means we'll go for the NLP side will be there. And when we go for the image, in that case, pixel value will be taken, and in that case, we'll go for the computer vision. Next one is that hidden layer. These hidden layers play the vital role for the recognitions. It means that particular intermediate layers, these particular hidden layers, that will transform your input data to the high level features. And it means that they are able to detect some edges will be there. After that, they will detect some shape, object will be there. After combining that, will be find out some object. And finally, we'll find out some final outcomes or predictions. In that case, we'll go for like a class labels and regression values. Next one is that another important part of your neural network, that is called the neurons and activation functions. And every neuron that will compute some weighted sum of input and then apply that particular activation function. Mostly we'll go for the ReLU will be there, sigmoidal will be there, tangent will be there, and either sometime we'll go for the leaky ReLU will be there, and sometime another time ILU are widely used. This is the actual property. Like this is the ReLU. When the value is negative, in that case, that will provide the zero value. According to the values, that will provide some value, like a positive value that will provide 1, 2, 3 according to the value. So when we write the mathematical formulation, that will mention here that max of 0x will be there. When the value is, for example, positive, in that case, that will provide the positive value. If the negative, in that case, it will provide that 0 values. So this is the actual mathematics behind this. Next one, ReLU, that is max 0.1 multiplied by x into x, that will be there. This is the actual function of your leaky ReLU. This is the tangent will be there. This is the linear. Next one we will say binary step function. Normally it is also known as the step function will be there. When it is a negative, in that case, that will represent by these values, and when positive value, that will represent by 1 will be there. So likewise, this is the representation 0 and 1 form. This is the linear function. This is the sigmoidal function. And these sigmoidal function mainly use sigmoidal and some tangent functions that are used to map from the continuous function to the binary. When we go for the meta heuristic, in that case, that are mainly used for the binary transformations. And beside these, this is ILU is again widely used nowadays. Is ILU and parametric ILU. So these are the utilizing here. Beside this is SILU is also there. And the reason behind is that use where we are mainly used, that is use ReLU in our hidden layers and sigmoidal for the binary classification mostly. And next one is that forward propagations, we have to go for like this is input layer, then hidden layer, then the output layers. And if some problem will be find out, means some output is not match, prediction is not according to that particular level, in that case error will be find out, then again the weight will be modified. That weight means the strength between these neurons will be there. So we have to adjust these particular neurons. And beside these, when we update these weight, in that case we have to go for the optimization function, and mainly the gradients will be used, and these gradient will be used to update the weight. And mainly the reason behind this is that we have the minimum losses will be there. The loss function we have to find out. Okay, so likewise, if we will go for the mathematics, in that case we'll write here like L. This is the loss will be there, and that will be taken as summation of user and item. When we go for the recommender system as a loss function, that will be right here like a data set will be there. Within the data set, you will mention the user item, user will be there, item will be there. So that will mention here summation of this one. And then we will mention like a function of loss, cap, UI, and out UI will be there. So this cap that will be mentioned is the predicted value, and that is the actual value will be there. So it means that will provide the loss function that will be mainly used for our the recommender systems. So in that case, gradient that will be used to update the weight to minimize the loss, and this stochastic gradient descent that will be update the weight iteratively. Okay. And when we calculate these particular losses, in that case, either we'll go for like a MSC will be there and MAE will be there. So mean absolute error can be also utilizing will be there. Okay. And this is the formula. We have to find out the mean square error. This is the cross entropy loss can be also used. And this MSC will be used for only the regression purpose. When we go for the classification, in that case, we'll go for the cross entropy losses will be there. These are the some we have shown losses and predictions will be there. And next one is that optimizer. We have mentioned the optimizer algorithm that will be adjust the weight to minimize the loss function will be there. In that case, either we'll go for that stochastic gradient descent, and either we have to use them. Adam will be there. Adam that will be combine that SGD with some movement and adaptive learning rate will be there. So, and initially we will say that learning rate should be the low, and after that that will be increase will be there. So depending upon our the applications, we have adjusted the learning rate will be there, and learning rate that will be represented the step size will be there. For example, you have to search some space. In that case, first we'll take the step size very large, and after that we have confined some area, then we have to reduce the step size. So that is the important one. It means adaptive learning rate that will be utilizing in our that Adam. And beside these adaptive this RMS probe will be also there, and in which we will say that adaptive learning rate depending upon the magnitude of the gradients. So these are the three different optimization algorithm we will utilizing in our the deep learning. And I have already mentioned about that overfitting will be there, when we will say that model perform very well in the training data, but poorly perform some unseen test value, that is called that overfitting problem will be there. The reason behind it that there will be memorize of the training instead of the generalize. We will say yes, we are capable to memorize some data will be there. Some unknown data will be come out, in that case that will be fail. So like this is the problem will be there. So instead of the generalization, only that will be remember some data. That is the problem of our the underfittings and overfittings we have mentioned. This is the validations will be there. And regularization is mainly used to prevent these overfitting problem. It means either we have to drop out will be there, because every nodes that are connected with each other, randomly we'll drop some neurons, and so that it will prevent some neurons capacity. For example, like this way is one layers will be there. This is the hidden layer 1, and this is the another. Just assume that hidden layer 2 will be there, H2 will be there. These are connections. Every node is connected with each other. In that case, we will drop down these connections. Some randomly drop down will these connections. So in that case, that will be not relies on the data will be there, not able to memorize this data. In that case, that will prefer the generalization. Similarly, the L2 regularization will be used, means some plenty function will be used. And these plenty function for the log weight to the loss function, and that will be also helpful for the overfitting problems. Like this is the actual will, this is the true zone. Underfitting and overfitting will be there. I have mentioned in the previously, like a capacity. This is the optimal capacity will be there. Again, that is depending upon our memory will be there. Like when either go for a small memory and log memory will be there, we will capture the log amount of the data. So like this is the bias will be there, bias will be decreased and variance will be increased, and this is the generalization error will be there. Depending upon the capacity, the bias will be reduced and variance will be increasing. Okay. So next one is the deep learning architecture we will widely use in our recommender system. The first one is that auto encoders will be there. Second one is that recurrent neural network that will be also widely used. Next one is here the convolution neural network, graph neural network, transformer based model will be there. And last one we'll discuss about some hybrid deep learning models will be there. And when you go for like this particular graph neural network, in that case, we'll say that your data will be represented in the terms of your vertex and error will be there. Sorry, edges will be there. And vertex that will be represented by your user and item. So these are the two things will be there, user and item. When we say edges, edges will be represented by the interaction between the user and items. So that will be represented by your interaction between user and items. So when we go for the graph, in that case, graph will be created between user items and interaction between them, that will be there. And normally we will say like a feature. It will when we represent some V, that will represent by the capital V will be there. That is called the feature vector will be there. And it means we have to find out some features from the given data items will be there. And when we go for that particular ranking, in that case, we will take like a UI that is equal to some function will be there, matching function that will take some HU, HI of some parameter models will be there. So like this way. So will that particular HU and HI, that is, we'll say that user data will be there and item data will be there. So that is the mapping between these. That is actual formula for our the graph neural networks. We'll discuss in the next slides. Next one is that autoencoder. It is two part. Autoencoders will be there. It means encoder and decoder are the two parts. Input take image will be taken, and then we'll say this encode will be there, and on the next side we will say decode will be there, and we'll just assume that both images should be almost similar. It means reconstruct. This is most of the time we'll say it is reconstruct the original input from the corrupted data. Like some problem is here, that will be reconstructed from that particular part. So that is used in recommender system to handle the noisy user item interaction. So when some data is not appropriate, not clean, in that case, to handle these noisy data, we have to go for the autoencoder. So we have to identify that where we have to apply which algorithms. Next one in the autoencoder, this is the variational autoencoder will be there. We don't go in the details of these architectures, only we'll just provide some brief introductions about these. Otherwise, it is a too big things to cover in that particular lecture. And variational autoencoder, that is known as a VAE will be there, and that is mostly depending upon your probabilistic representation of your data. And that particular V is mostly used in your collaborative filtering. And in that case, that will be model your the user preference as a probability distributions. So the V is widely used in your the collaborative filtering. Next one is the recurrent neural network. In the recurrent neural network means this type of the signals will be there, and that are mainly designed to the sequence will be there. Means that will be processed the user browsing history and time series data will be there. That is utilizing. For example, first one, the credit card limit will be, for just assume that 25,000. After you will achieve this 25,000, then the bank will call you that we want to increase your the card limit. The reason behind is that your purchasing buying capacity is increased up to that particular threshold will be there. So likewise, they will also check in that buying history or browsing history will be also identify your buying capacity on the particular month will be there. And for example, in the 1 month, you will be purchased the 20,000 items from the particular website. In that case, the one particular item is that 15,000 maximum limit, maximum cost is of 15,000. Next time it will say that you can purchase 15,000 and your buying capacity, it will check that 25,000 you can purchase 1 month. So next time it will be recommend that item whose cost is more than the 15,000 or 25,000 will be there. So likewise, it will be utilizing these browsing history. And to process these will require some recurrent neural network, because that will be capture the sequences will be there. Similarly, the when we say playlist will be created in our the particular Spotify. So in that case, it will be also recommend that you are interesting that what is the next song you want to listen from that particular list will be there. So that is a sequencing will be there. Again, the X note will be there, then we'll apply, then the X1, X2. So this is the actual, we'll say sequencing will be find out from these recurrent neural network. Next one is that when I have mentioned that recurrent neural network, this is that some problem will be there. That is the gradient exploding will be there, and sometime we will say that gradient vanishing is a problem will be there. So in that case, we will go for that short long-term memory that will be utilizing. In that case, that will be capture some long-term dependency, some dependency in the sequence that will be also captured. For example, that will predict the next movie the user might watch based upon the browsing history. So depending upon their hobbies, preferences, each of them, it will be predict that yes, these are the movies that are most preferable for you. Next one is that convolution neural network that is widely used for the recommender systems. In that case, we will like this is the one particular image will be there, and from these we will find out some feature map. Then pooled feature mapping, pooling will be done. Then convolution will be applied. All of these that will be captured some feature map will be there, and that is called the feature extraction. As previously we use the different type of the techniques to extract the feature. What these particular layers, up to the flattened layers, we will able to capture the features, and that is called the feature extractions process will be there. Like a convolution apply, then the polling will be there, then the convolution, then pooling again apply in the flattened layers. So up to the flattened layers, we will say it is the feature mapping will be mapping will be done, and feature will be extracted from the given images. And after that particular, we'll say like a fully connected layers that will provide the classifications will be there. Means we'll capture the data, the linkage will be created depending on the probability functions. Then we'll find out some values will be there. So these are the probabilistic distribution of classifications will be there. So depending upon the image features means color will be there, shape will be there, textures will be there, all will be utilizing. Then it will be recommend the product. Yes, this is the product will be there. As like a Mesho that will be used, this particular app will be there for the clothing. Similarly, some mantra will be utilizing these concept for the previous purchasing. They will recommend that yes, these are the color are more appropriate for the particular women's, and in that case, they will suggest that you will purchase that particular suit and some other things. Okay. Next one is that correlation that will be used on the season-based recommendation will be there, because CNN that is the short-term user interactions will be there, and in that case, e-commerce session that will be also depending upon the current click it will find out. For example, again some input data will be taken like a human face image data, some synthetic data image will be there. In that case, we'll train our the image data using the CNN, then capture some image using the some cameras will be there, smart cameras, TV cameras, and then we will use some user perspective from both aspect will be there, single users and multi users, and then they apply the filtering, and then they will personalize the program recommendation systems will be there. These are some actually the session based recommender systems will be utilizing. Next one is a graph. I have mentioned already that these two things will be there. Vertex will be there and edges will be there. Vertex represented by the user and items, and vertex the particular edges that will represent the interaction between them. Okay, in that case, a user that is node, and I already mentioned this is the G is equal to V, E will be theirs. and we have mentioned how we have to find out the values. This is the multi-graph will be there, and in that case, again, the different type of the nodes, either the global node, hyper nodes, when the one node connected with the multiple edges will be there, and simple nodes. Depending upon these, we will say that how the user will be connected to the items, and what are the actual strength between these item and nodes will be there. Next one is that graph convolution networks that will be also utilizing. Again, that will be based upon the preferences of the similar users will be there. In that case, we will take the similar user, not the single users will be there. And again, the embedding will be utilizing some aggregated function on our the neighborhood nodes. So this is the graph neural network. Then the transformer will be there. And mainly in the recommender system, we'll use that RAT4 rec will be there. That will be the architecture of the transformers. You skip it. Next one is that hybrid. Hybrid deep learning means we will combine the multiple architecture. For example, we mentioned here, like in the first phase, we have used CNN, then we'll use the dense CNN will be there, then the separation phase. Different, like sometime we will combine that CNN with RNN, and some CNN with other architectures will be there. So depending upon the requirement, we will either combine the CNN with the RNN will be there, CNN with some transformer will be also there sometime. So like a image and text based recommendation system, another time we will say image or text, both are the recommendation system will be utilizing. Like for image, we will go for the CNN, and text we will go for the RNN will be there. And this is called the content based recommender system that will both using the image as well as that text data. And traditionally, we will say that collaborative filtering will be there, content based filtering, that all depending upon the features, and linear models will be there. But now the time, the deep learning that will be automatically learn the complex patterns and representation from the raw data, and that will be also improve some recommender system. But now the time, this is the knowledge based recommender system will be also more popular nowadays. And beside these, the importance of the deep learning in our the recommender system. What are the importance? So in that case, it is able to non-linear relationship. Previously, it is unable to only handle the linear relationship, the traditional methods. But now the time, this deep learning is able to handle that non-linear relationship. So it means non-linear and complex relation that can be easily handled by the deep learning. So we are widely use the deep learning in our recommender systems. Next one is that it will be capture the complex pattern, because some pattern are unable to identify, unable to handle in our the log data set. But in the deep learning, the log data set can be easily handled, because a million of the users will be there and items will be there. That can be easily handled. This is the recommender system we have mentioned here, like a user. There's a rating, behavior, query will be there, restriction of the attributes will be also there. In that case, we will mention here the analysis of the rating. And these rating will be utilizing in the two modules, like collaborative filters will be there, and behavior, that will be again the analysis of the behavior, and direct query will be there. And then both of these combined, then use some recommender models will be there. So these are the, we'll say, utilizing each and everything will be have some modules. Within these modules, some output will be combined, some other methods will be there. Another importance is that it will improve the accuracy and scalability. So it means when we have the large amount of the data, we have mentioned that it will be able to capture the patterns. So it will be achieved the high accuracy. And again, it is a scalable architecture, because in that case, distributed training will be handled very efficiently, the large amount of the data. Next one is that application of the system we have to use. Important one is the e-commerce. We will use in our the Amazon, Flipkart, eBay, that are widely used these deep neural network and transformer based model, like a BAT4 rec, that will provide some personalized product recommendation based upon user behavior, past purchasing, and browsing history will be there. Amazon is widely used, and that is utilizing that collaborative filters and deep learning based embedding will be there. Next one is that streaming services, either will go for that Netflix will be there, YouTube's, both are using these recommender system. Besides Spotify, some and another these music online streaming services that will be utilizing these recommender system. And that these are using that recurrent neural network or LSTM, because they have analyzed that user watch history will be there, and also predict the future preferences. So both are using here the particular RNN and LSTM are used in that particular things. And Spotify, that is use the deep learning approaches for the music recommendation. On YouTube, that will use that deep neural collaborative filtering that will recommend that video based on the user interaction. Next one is that we will also apply these recommender system on the online learning platforms. Either the Coursera will be there, Udemy will be there, EDX will be there, all these that will be utilizing. And in that case, these particular online learning platform that is used that graph neural network and autoencoders. They will suggest that course based upon that user engagement will be there, course completion rate will be there, and similar type of the learner they will recommend. And the Coursera, that particular Coursera, that will be used that embedding techniques as well as that neural collaborative techniques will be utilizing. Next one is that application of the health recommender system that is widely used in our that healthcare and drug recommendation, and in which we use that graph convolution neural network and transformer based model that will recommend the personalized treatment on drugs based on the medical histories and genetic profiles they will recommend. And another time the AI powered recommender system that will assist the doctor. Don't blindly test on these tools. You have to go for the doctor, and you will take every drugs and every treatment only the recommendation of the doctors. No, don't go for these AI recommender system directly faith on these systems. Only you have to. They are only developed to assist the doctors. And beside these, because we don't say that it will provide that accuracy is 100% or not. So always don't blindly faith on AI powered recommender, these health and drug recommender systems. Only they are helpful or they are assist the doctors. Okay. And next one is online news and social media, because Facebook and Instagram, Twitters, everywhere we have used some recommender systems, and they are using like a self-attention mechanism, like a transformer and bread-based model to recommend the news articles and post, and friends will be there. And Facebook that is use the deep interest network that will be recommend your user engagement and interactions. Okay. And these are some data sets in recommend system research. So in that case, the Amazon have some data set that have some number of user and item and interactions will be there. And again, the problem is come out like exposure bias will be there, training bias will be there, user bias will be there. These are some problem. Fairness issues will be there. Again, the beauty is the another data set you will find out on the websites. And in that case, there is a number of the user items, and these are the edges. The problem is again the exposure bias and user bias will be there. These are some data sets if you want to work on that particular recommendation systems. About when, because we have mentioned here the fairness. In that case, we have some matrices will be there to evaluate these fairness. First one is that Gini coefficient will be there. In that case, these are the formula. We have to write here the 1 upon 2n square EV bar, and summation of I is equal to 1 to n, j is equal to 1 to n, and EVI minus EVJ will be there. Here n, that represent that item numbers will be there. The EVI is that exposure frequency of the items will be there, and EV bar, that is average item exposure frequencies will be there. Next one is the KL divergence can be also compute the divergence distributions between the two different distribution that will measure the biasness between the distributions, like a DI, that is the D1 distribution of the item of V will be there, and D2 that is the refer to fair distributions of item V. So we have to find out these KL divergences that will provide that whether it is a fairness or not. Next one is the challenges in our recommender systems. And in that case, the first problem is called a cold start problem. Cold start problem I have mentioned already, like a difficulty in recommending item to the new user. Similarly, the new item to the user will be there. So new user have no interaction history will be there. It is very difficult to predict their preferences. So new item, similarly, the new item have no user interaction, so making it hard to recommend to something. So likewise, this is a one problem in our the recommender system. This is a cold start problem. And for example, new movie that will be posted on the Netflix and there is no rating. So system cannot recommend it effectively. It will recommend, but again, it will be not that much effectively recommend. Second one problem is that data sparsity. It means most user item interactions are missing. It means when the data set is very large, and in that case, user interact only small fraction of the items will be there. Normally, we will also only interact with small number of the data items will be there. So in that case, for example, there is a number of the movies will be there, number of the series will be there. Only we are interested in only the small numbers. In that case, it is a problem. Means we are not able to find out the effectiveness of collaborative filterings and other methods will be there. So it is again the difficult to identify the similar users and items. Next one is the scalability issue. It means we have to handle the data with the millions of the users and items. So again, we require when the amount is very large. In that case, the processing power is more required in the real-time system. So in that case, YouTube processes a billion of the videos and user interaction daily. In that case, when the billions of the videos and user, it means large storage will be required. And it means a high computation power will be required. So most of the time, it will be need for the distributed computing framework. This is the Apache Spark will be utilizing. Next is that challenge is computation cost will be there. And the training model, I have already mentioned that deep learning will take the load of the resources during the training time. So in that case, the deep learning are the computationally expensive to the train. And the training, when we have the large transformer model, it will take the days or weeks will be there. So it is the problem, computational power will be required. And for example, if the our model is the matrix factorization methods will be utilizing, in that the training will be low, CPU will be more appropriate. But when we go for the neural collaborative training filtering, in that case, the training time will be medium and GPU will be required. When we go for the transformer, in that case, that particular training time is very high, and in that case, not the single GPU, multiple GPU, and now the time the TPU will be also required. Tensor processing unit will be required, not up to the GPU is suitable. Again, when we go for like a GPU, it will require that at least 30 to 40 lakh GPU, one GPU will be required. The cost will be there. So again, the cost is very high for the hardwares. But now the time we'll save for the transformer. In that case, TPU will be is much costly of that particular part. So tensor processing units, either will go for the graphic processing unit or tensor processing unit will be required. And again, it will take the long training time. So in that case, delay the model updations will be there. Next one is that ethical concern. That is the another important one, because now the time the ethical consideration is the major scenario now the day for computation purpose or some AI based models will be there. It means we will require some eliminate the bias and retain the fairness in our recommendation. The recommendation will be never favor some demographic or some items will be there. And it might be possible that job recommendation system may favor some male candidate over the female candidate. It should not be there. So it will say that the biasing should be removed. We have to reinforce some existing bias and inequality, and we reduce the trust. If it will be happen in that case, we will reduce the trust on the recommender systems. Next one is the explainability, because now the time we will say that why it is happen. Every time when we say some input will be given and output will be find out, it is just like a black box will be there. So it means we will say that some reason behind that. If find out some value, some predictions will be there. So what is the reason behind that particular output? So we will say we have to require some explainability. Means explainable AI now the time is more popular. They will mention that why the output prediction will be come out. What is the reason behind these predictions will be there. So user, likewise, this deep learning, there is almost a black box will be there. We'll say output will come out 90%, 99%, 100% will be there. But we are not explain what is the reason behind this. Okay. So in that case, it is reduce the user trust and adaptation will be there, because it will not provide the explanation, explain only the deep learning models, and make it hard to debug and improve that models will be there. Another problem is that overfittings when we go for the deep learning. In that case, model perform well on the training data, but poorly on the testing data will be there. It means it memorizes the training data instead of the generalization to the new data. It means we have to effectiveness is reduced when it deploy on the real-time scenario. And for that case, either we'll go for the regularization, either the cross validation that we'll be utilizing to move from that particular memorization to the generalization purpose. Next one is the privacy concern will be there, because user data is very sensitive and must be protected, because every time you will fetch some data from the user, because browsing history will be there, preferences will be there, buying capacity will be also there, their credit card information will be also there. So likewise, your data is very important, because sensitive data will be there. In that case, it must be protected. But again, the problem is there, because most of the time we will go for the federated learning that will train the data on the decentralized data, without the sharing some raw data will be there. That will be the solutions that either will go for the federated learnings, and again Google that will use the federated learning for that keyword searching will be there. So likewise, these are the solution that will not provide whole data, only some particular features will be provided there. If you are interested in working on that particular recommender system, in that case, these are some future research directions, and that are the improved model we have to improve that model transparency. It means explainability should be added, and so that we are able to find out that yes, this is the reason behind the solutions will be there, and we have to design the model so that it is a more interpretable, more understandable in the both the technical and non-technical users. Second one is a hybrid approaches. It means we have to combine the both the collaborative and content-based models, and it will also provide beside these combining these one, we will also add some interpretable components will be there, so it will be able to maintain the both balance between the accuracy as well as the transparency will be there. Next one is the interdisciplinary research. It means increase the collaboration between the AI researchers, and beside this, as I mentioned that recommender system will be utilizing in the healthcare and drug recommendation will be there. So in that case, AI researchers should be work with that doctors and the clinic medical practitioner will be there, and clinical experts will be there, so that they will be able to validate their tools, design tools will be there. Okay, so that is the another factors that multidisciplinary research will be required. Next one is the regulatory standards will be there, because deployment and implementation of these AI, these are no regulatory standards will be there. So in that case, we have to design some regular standards, and beside these, there's a need for the transparency and interpretabilities. Next one is a human-centric design, because that emphasize on the human-centric design principle in development of AI systems will be there. It should be user-friendly, explanation should be there, interface should be easy to use by the user groups. Okay. Next one is the explainability. I have mentioned that explainable AI should be used when we design some these recommender systems. Next one is the real-time explanation should be provided, and ethical implementation like a fairness, transparency, that should be implemented in during the development of AI-based recommender system. And beside that, explanatory for different types of data types will be there. It is we will design some explainable AI, that is the explainable AI techniques, and that will be catered to a whole type of the data. Not only the images will be there, text will be there, but it also applicable to the time series data. So that will be enhance the applicability of the interpretable models across a diverse domain. Next one is education and awareness will be required. We have to increase the education and awareness program to familiarize the stakeholder, that user and the developer both have some importance of our explainable AI. Okay. And so the trust will be built between the user, that our data will be in the secure hand. It will not go into outside the world will be there. And global collaboration will be required, and to addressing the challenges that will be faced in our systems. And these are the top conferences if you want to publish your paper in the different conferences. In that, these are the A-star conferences, like KDD will be there, ACM conference on the knowledge discovery and data mining will be there. Next one is that SIGIR, there is the ACM special interest group on the information retrieval. Next one, the WW, this is the web conference, formerly that is known as that World Wide Web Conference. Neural IPS will be the neural information processing system. You can also target these conferences. Then next, ICML, this is the International Conference on Machine Learning. And AI, that is the Association for Advancement of Artificial Intelligence. So these are the top A-star conferences. And if you want to read the data regarding these some recommender system, these are some top journal in which the paper you will find out about these recommender system. First one is the ACM transaction on the recommender system. TORs will be there. ACM transactions on the intelligence system and technology. Next one is that ACM transaction on information system. Next, IEEE transaction on the knowledge and data engineering, information processing and management by the Elsevier knowledge-based system. Again, the Elsevier will be there. IEEE transaction on the neural network and learning systems. Journal of the Machine Learning Research and Entertainment Computing, and the International Journal of your Computer Human Computer Studies. These are the research group. They are actually working on the recommender system. This is IIT Delhi. They are working on the recommender system. This is the pre-COG research group will be there. This lead by that Professor working on the social media analytic and personalized recommender system. IIT Bombay is also working on the recommender system. That is that this particular web information retrieval and data science group will be there by the Professor Suman Chakravarti. That will mainly focus on the personalized and recommender algorithms they will be developed. In IIT Madras, the data science research group will be there by the Professor Balaraman. They are working on the reinforcement learning for the recommendation. Similarly, IIIT Hyderabad, they are working on the research and information retrieval labs. Action lab will be there under the guidance of Professor Verma, and they are mainly working on that information retrieval and recommendation system. Similarly, the IC Bangalore, they have some research group. This is the machine learning and optimization group will be there. They're working on the factor matrix factorization and deep learning for recommender system. Similarly, some other is the IIT Kanpur is here. This is working the information management group. They're working on the personalized and recommender systems. And besides another group, this is the data analytic and intelligence research group. They're working on the intelligent recommender systems. So these are the research group. If you want to work on that particular research group, you can contact them. Similarly, the industry research labs will be there, like a Microsoft Research India Bangalore. They're working on that personalized and recommender system for the Microsoft products only. IBM Research India will be there. This is the IBM Research Lab in Bangalore. They work on the AI-based recommendation system. Next one is the Adobe Research India, that based on the content recommendation system and personalization. Next is the Flipkart AI Research will be there. In that case, Flipkart ML Research, they're working on the e-commerce recommendation systems. Similarly, the Amazon Science India will be there. In that case, work on the product recommendation system and also working on the personalized algorithm for the Amazon services in India. So these are the industry research labs will be there. They're working on the recommender system. And beside these, some another collaborative research initiative will be also there. NVIDIA with the IIT Hyderabad AI Research Center. They have collaborating with the GPU accelerated recommender systems in that particular collaboration. Next one is that Intel IIT Bombay Center for AI. They're working on that efficient recommendation algorithms and machine learning for personalization. Similarly, the TCS research labs will be also there. They're working on that enterprise recommendation systems. They will work on the recommendation application of various domains there. Okay, so now we will complete all these content now. Thank you. If you have any question, you can ask, please.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Any question from the audience?